Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались з кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там вбивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The lead Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and it's a good day in the USA. I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1079 of the War News stream. And today we have very, very big news that apparently Russia launched another IRBM missile, this time at the capital city, Kyiv, but it exploded before it got there, and that was a very fortunate event. And it looks like Ukraine begun a new surprise offensive in Russia, and also Russia started covert nuclear launch exercises. So big news to cover today, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we've been able to hear the significant news today that the Russian Federation has attempted to launch another Oreshnik intermediate-range ballistic missile at the city of Kyiv, and the missile exploded mid-flight over Russia. It was a critical mechanical failure that led to the loss of the missile. It now shows that out of every Oreshnik launch that has ever been conducted in combat conditions, they have a 50% failure rate at this point, with 1 in every 2 being able to make it all the way to its target and successfully deploy its MIRV, showing that the Russian Federation's nuclear abilities are probably, much like many anticipated, far overrated compared to their actual mechanical and actual maintenance abilities. We have also been able to hear in major news today, while I choke on spit because I inhaled so quickly, that the Russian Federation has taken a significant loss at the same time that Oreshnik exploded in air through a major offensive that occurred inside of the Saudia area of the Kursk Oblast, as Ukrainian forces today undertook a massive offensive effort pushing from the town of Makhnovka, just to the south of Suja, and all the way to Ulanok. They have achieved a 4-mile advance in around 4 hours, approximately meaning that the Ukrainian army advanced 1 mile an hour during the entirety of the 4-hour offensive. It was the first time that new kinds of strategies, doctrines, and tactics were used by the Ukrainian armed forces, and it appears to have given them a massive upper hand in the battle in Kursk so far. Meanwhile, the Russian Federation is not doing that well inside of Ukraine at large, as we have been able able to see incredibly large battle losses throughout the entirety of Ukraine today by the Russian Federation, and it does appear that the Ukrainian armed forces have been able to hold their ground significantly, holding the Russians back and stopping them from any further advances throughout most of their territory. We have also been able to see that today the French have announced the arrival of the first Mirage 2005F, capable of carrying Magic 2s and Mika EMs, which are incredibly advanced and capable French air-to-air missiles. We have also been able to hear that the Netherlands has provided some additional F-16s as well to Ukraine, once again further augmenting the Ukrainian Air Force and not only making it larger, but more westernized, able to use NATO standard equipment at this time. We have also been able to hear significant news from the Middle East as well, as Iran has launched their first drone carrier, which is nothing really to be impressed with, but we will be covering it because it is the first carrier of any kind that Iran has ever had. And also we got to see that the Saudi Arabians today were conducting hostile action near to the border region as they were obliterating the Yemeni Houthis and making sure to scatter and disperse their defensive positions along the border amidst the Saudi Arabians. It is a fairly significant thing that we were able to see today because they were hitting the Houthis with thermobaric rockets from a TOS-1, interestingly enough. But nevertheless, we have loads of news from practically every single area of the world at this point. And of course, the biggest news coming out of Ukraine. It's been huge. Massive news today, and it does seem as though that the Russian Federation has started to show its hand, and it's not a good hand. Getting right on into the news, we were able to hear that a Oreshnik exploded over the Russian Federation today, from what we were able to hear from intelligence and also news reports that were being made around the world. Reports claim that Russia has fired another IRBM at Ukraine. The missile targeted the capital city of Kyiv, but exploded above Russian soil before reaching the target. From what we generally understand, the Oreshnik was launched from some sort of a mobile launcher near to the front lines or a significant areas away. The missile then went through its boost phase and its post-boost phase successfully, but somewhere through the mid-course phase, a critical mechanical failure was sustained by the missile, and the missile broke up and exploded mid-air over the Russian Federation. It was incapable of activating its MIRV, its multiple independent reentry vehicle system, and it also was not capable of even reaching the territory of Ukraine, as we understand that the missile exploded somewhere over Tula, Oriol, or Kursk, or possibly Bryansk. It's a fairly significant field of oblast that the missile may have exploded over, but it was reported incredibly clearly today that the Oreshnik did in fact explode and was in fact launched. This is significant news, especially for understanding Russia's nuclear strategic and tactical abilities. It appears that the nuclear abilities of the Russian Federation on the strategic and tactical level are most likely incredibly stretched. The Oreshnik is a brand new variety or an upgrade of the RS-26 Rubesh, which was used during the times of the Soviet Union but was not necessarily hypersonic capable. The Oreshnik is a slight modification, much like the Kinzel is to the Iskander. Basically what they did is that they put a turbo up in that thing and it goes a little bit faster. But nevertheless, what we are understanding at this point is that the turbo failed and the missile broke up in air and exploded. It's basically the gist of the story. Now, why is this important? The Oreshnik is a brand new upgrade of the Rubesh. Most nuclear weapons within the Russian arsenal are not brand new, and they are not fresh. Most of them still exist in their original Soviet configurations, designed and constructed during the times of the Soviet Union. It is incredibly clear at this point that even with Russia's modern intermediate-range ballistic missiles, such as the Oreshnik, such as the Sarmat, and many others, there is no real success rates that exist that are incredibly high. Failure rates are extremely high. Usually, the average failure rate for weapon systems within the military is usually expected to be around 10%, and 15% is considered the high end. Having a 50% failure rate in combat operations for an intermediate range ballistic missile is abysmal. And the Sarmat, which is Russia's brand new intercontinental ballistic missile system, has around a 80% failure rate from all of its test launches that we've seen publicly so far, giving us the understanding that the Russian Federation's new nuclear weaponry hardly works at all, much less the older nuclear weaponry weaponry, which may not be working whatsoever. So largely from what we're understanding, the Russian Federation's nuclear bluff attempt today not only failed, it backfired in their face because it's showing the entire world the Russian Federation probably doesn't have enough funds or even a technological ability at this point to maintain or properly use any kind of nuclear weapons at this point, or their delivery systems, which may be in absolutely decrepit states of failure and may not be usable beyond the fact of just raw fear factor, which of course many bullies like to just lean in on, is the fear factor side of things, and then they don't really achieve anything out of that rather than making themselves look like an idiot and losing a lot of respect. But nevertheless, a lot of people have
so basically what you're saying is it's a stroke of luck that the first IRBM actually made it to its target. That was actually like winning the lottery for Russia, because typically they usually fail, and they failed all their tests as well. So it's just, honestly, the one that worked was the miracle for Russia.
It really was the miracle. And let me see if I can get you all a picture of a Rubesh. This is the best one we have right here of the Rubesh being launched. You can also see a infographic of the launcher and the missile right here. Once again, this is the exact same thing as the Oreshnik. It's just that some of the internals and its flight capabilities have been slightly altered or modified, but they couldn't make a brand new missile because the costs of that are prohibitive. The Russian Federation doesn't have a massive GDP or even one close to what the Soviet Union used to be, and this greatly limits the amount of money that they can spend on their military. Even now, with the war in Ukraine in full swing, and this being the largest war that's ever been seen on the face of Europe, Russia is only able to muster about $200 billion a year in military spending. That's compared to China in peacetime spending approximately $350 billion annually on their military, and the United States spending about $950 billion on their military during peacetime. The Russians in war can only get it up to about 200 or so, and before the war it was only around 50 billion. Going off of this, they just did not have the money to largely maintain a lot of their older nuclear weapons, much less develop new ones. So this always means, as far as the Russians are concerned, that corners have to be cut and they have to try and work with what they have. So instead of making a brand new missile like the Sarmat, which also is having even higher failure rates than the Rubesh, they went with the tried and true Rubesh and then modified its thruster as well as some of its internals to make it a little bit more speedy, more so. That's the exact same thing that they did with the Kinzhal missile, which I'll show you all right here. The Kinzhal hypersonic missile seen here is quite literally just an upgrade of the Iskander missile, which I'll also show y'all right here as well. This is the Iskander missile. This is the Kinzhal. Quite literally the exact same missile. The rear tail section has been modified slightly, but beyond that, this is the ground-launched version, the largely the Iskander, and this is the air-launched version modified for higher speeds, so that way technically, during some parts of its mid-course, it is hypersonic, and that is the Kinzhal. Pretty much the same thing was done to the Oreshnik, it's just a modified Rubesh, and even still, not only with it being a Soviet weapon system, which should have a much smaller rate of failure because they were able to put some money into this back in the Soviet days, it still is having a significantly high failure rate. And this is the second launch that we've ever seen of an intermediate range ballistic missile in combat conditions. And in combat conditions, as of right now, the failure rate of the Oreshnik is 50%. That means that 1 in every 2 Oreshniks will fail before it makes it to its target, meaning that the Russian strategic arsenal we could largely extrapolate the same information for. If the Russian Federation fired all 400 of their intercontinental ballistic missiles, only about 200 of those would actually make it to where they were a serious threat to Western countries and may actually impact their targets. This is huge. I mean, this is massive. This changes a lot for the West because this lets us know that while the damage would still be significant from a Russian nuclear attack, it quite clearly would be far smaller than ever imagined at this point, because unlike Russia, American nuclear weapons do work because we have the funding to actually maintain them properly and keep them at a constant state of readiness. But loads of people are talking about this major news, the news that we've never heard before of an intermediate range ballistic missile that is nuclear capable, for that matter. It would carry a nuclear warhead in an actual nuclear war. Failed. It's the second launch. The first one succeeded, the second one failed. A lot of people are wondering what's going to be happening next, or really more so if Putin's going to try again to try and save face on this severe embarrassment that just happened for the Russian government. And it seems as though everyone is saying at this point that Putin will try again soon. But Matthew, what are folks thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right. So the big question, like the enforcer said, is will Putin try again soon now that he's been embarrassed worldwide that his IRBMs do not work that well? And it looks like 87% of the audience, the overwhelming majority, said yes, Putin will try again soon, while 5% said that they are unable to try again due to technical issues, and 3% said no, Putin will call it quits. And honestly, I agree with the vast majority of people. Putin will be forced to launch another one. In fact, probably very, very soon to prove to the world that he does have functioning Oreshnik missiles. If he does not do that, he could be perceived as weak, or Russia could be viewed as not having functioning missiles, which is something that he cannot afford to have. So he will probably launch one. The big question to me will be, is he going to up the ante this time to basically save more face? This could be actually a worse situation for Ukraine if he has to try to save face like that, because he could do something even crazier than last time. And also, we don't even know what warhead was on this IRBM. It could have been not armed with a warhead. It could have had a conventional one, or at the worst case scenario, it could have had a nuclear warhead. We know today it didn't because it exploded in Russia, and there's been no reports of a nuclear explosion, but he could up the ante. You never know. But right now, I agree with the majority. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would just have to say, I don't believe it's going to work. Two Oreshniks don't make a right, and I just don't think that there will be another launch of an Oreshnik anytime soon. The Oreshnik failure that happened today is most likely going to make the Russians consider quite heavily that the next launch could also fail. And if it failed, now they're making themselves look like a real joke. They look like a joke already. But how big of a joke would you be, Matthew, if the second launch to really try and cover up this failed launch, what if that one failed as well? Now they have a 66% failure rate in combat conditions for their brand new hypersonic IRBM. That would look even worse.
Yeah, he's just lowering the odds every single time that it's not going to work. It's just proving to everybody. But also, though, like I think the risk, honestly, is bigger that he looks a lot weaker if he does not launch another one to prove, or at least try to convince the world that maybe that was just a glitch with that particular one. So honestly, like sadly, I think the odds are high he's going to do another one. And it's really disturbing. This one was aimed at Kyiv, which is literally the capital of Ukraine. That's the worst case scenario, is to fire an Oreshnik at Kyiv. And it sounds like Putin was going for it today, which makes you think, how come these peace talks are going so good in the background, but yet Putin's firing literally an IRBM at the capital city of Ukraine? That doesn't really match up.
It really doesn't match up, and it really is showing us, like we're saying here on the channel, the negotiations are not really even going anywhere, and if they are, they're going badly. There's nothing on either side that's actually showing that this is going well, and it's just looking bad in the background, to be entirely honest with you. As far as like ending the war is going to be going on for quite some time at this point. The Department of State in the United States has made it incredibly clear that we're pretty much getting ready for World War III here in the Western world, and the Russian Federation, through its actions, are showing very clearly that they are preparing for World War III in the current situation. And also with the use of this second Oreshnik, and it is aimed at Kyiv, that is even a grander escalation, at least in terms of target, than compared to the city of Dnipro, which was the last target that was hit by an Oreshnik IRBM. So with this in mind, I would have to say that they certainly are trying to ramp up the pressure, but I still have to think, man, I'd have to be with a small minority of people who say that Putin will call it quits for now. Like, he will probably do it again in the future, but for now, they have to give it a minute, because what if they rushed another launch, a second launch here, right after this one, and it failed? Like, it would be terrible for them. It would be even worse than if they just left it alone. Because right now they're a joke, but that will die off here in a little bit. And then if they launch another one and it is successful, they'll be taken seriously. And even if it fails, then they're just a joke again. But if a second one is launched just a day after this one, and it also fails, no one's going to take them seriously. I mean, hell, at that point, they really are a joke.
Yeah, that's true. And also notice another thing. The story about the IRBM launch was generally not covered widespread by the media today. And I'm not sure if that was by design or was it just simply because they missed it or what. The article came from Forbes, which was the source of the article about the IRBM launch. And that was the only place I saw it as a source, which is kind of interesting. I wonder if there was a concerted campaign to sort of like push this under the radar to try to make Putin and really not worry about saving face so much, because maybe not too many people heard about it. But really, honestly, though, you're really not worried about what the people think, like normal civilians, because they're not the ones you have to worry about. It's the government decision makers you have to worry about. And those are the people that know about the IRBM launch, and they know it failed. So I don't know, like all the way around, it's kind of sketchy, to be perfectly honest, all the way around.
It is a really sketchy thing. I'm still thinking, though, they might give it a breather, because with a failure today, a second failure right on the cusp of that would be a horrendous thing for Russia's image globally. This is already bad as it is. They don't want to, damage it even further and tarnish their reputation. Because remember, Matthew, it's all about respect, and you got to make sure that the Russians are getting their respect. You know what I mean? But moving on from that, we were also able to hear something else that was fairly interesting as well, outside of the Oreshnik exploding, is that the Russians were also conducting simultaneously today covert nuclear launch trials. They, of course, televised it and publicized it to the entire world to show, look, we could secretly launch a nuclear weapon. But here is the clip of them conducting these trials today.
Yes. The covert military exercises with these massive trucks that can be seen from a satellite.
Okay, bring it in. Bring it in. Beep.
They put a beeper on the nuclear truck?
Yeah.
Are they joking?
Man, they're like, we have to make sure that when we're killing everyone in the world, that they're at least safe when they're launching the missile. Jeez. It's like...
Crazy.
There they go down the road. Your military is pretty bad off when you can't even get all the Wender smocks to match. This guy's looking into space. I think he's on Crocodile. This guy has a solid white smock. This guy has a rig, for some reason. This guy is also wearing cuffs. He's just like that, y'all. Don't chastise him. And also, this guy's winter smock has been sitting out in the sun for at least 3 years because it's just more yellow and faded out than everyone else's smock. So they don't even have enough money to issue proper smocks. And is that a Makarov? That is a Makarov, dude. This guy's been issued a Makarov.
Man, you know about the Russian leaders with a Makarov. Those guys you got to worry about.
Man, I'm telling you, man. And also, dude, this guy right here that's looking into space, probably high. Dude, this guy literally took Titan the belt to the literal extreme. It looks like his midsection is probably being, having the blood flow cut from it, honestly. Like, look at that.
Oh, you know what he's really doing? They've probably been told, okay, Bliat, this is covert nuclear exercise. Really real Western threat. Yes, Bliat, the missiles are coming in. He's looking up, looking for the American nuke coming in, like, I don't see it. It's like...
Dude, they said, we're going to launch a test of our nuclear capabilities. Nuclear? Where? And they start looking up. He's like, where? Where is it? I don't see it.
He's still looking.
Also, I like the red armband. Really screams, Geschnick Verleitmen in die Deutschen. It's like that kind of a deal while also launching a nuclear weapon. I'm not gonna lie, fellas. This little covert nuclear launch, it sure takes them a hell of a long time to get to the launching part. We didn't even see it. Like, first they're like, okay, everyone, group meeting. We have to have our lessons learned and also make sure that we are in parade formation. So, dress right, dress. Okay, front. Okay, everyone. Hello, everyone. Today we are conducting a nuclear launch test. This is to make sure that the Russian Federation is able to ensure that our adversaries are scared of our great country and our glorious leader, Vladimir Putin, as we prepare to launch this nuclear weapon. While I'm talking right now, in real life, the U.S. nuclear weapons would be flying over the Arctic right now directly towards us, but we are going to spend precious time and minutes to make sure that I am able to have the company briefing. Now, does anyone have any complaints? I'm not having enough crocodile. Okay, shut up. Anyways, anyone else got any other complaints? It's like, okay, well, let's get to putting out the tarps and having a coffee. And eventually the American missiles will arrive. We won't even have to worry about launching this thing. You know what I mean? It's like, what is this? Like, honestly, man, if this is supposed to show how quick and how agile this launch process is, it's really showing the opposite. It's showing that it's almost bureaucratic and long and drawn out, honestly.
Yeah, man, they're just happy to be here, honestly, because Bliat, once the covert nuclear exciting military exercise ends, it's back to a funeral duty, Bliat.
Man, also another thing, he's like, by the way, we designed these trucks to drive around. Oh, I don't know why I'm turning into a German, but we designed these trucks to drive around the great Soviet Union and now the Russian Federation. I forgot to tell you, by the way, that U.S. satellites can picture our entire country in real time, pretty much making the mobility of these things completely obsolete because they will know exactly where they are at any given moment. But nevertheless, we will still use them, and we will act like this is covert. It's like, that doesn't even work. It's like that's the thing that changed. Because the reason why they made these things mobile, just for y'all to know, is that back in the day, they were incredibly scared of things like the SR-71 Blackbird, picturing every single nuclear missile silo site in the Russian Federation. So not only like the submarines, which are pretty much undetectable until they launch, they also wanted a vehicle that could carry around strategic nuclear weapons and launch those from an undisclosed location completely at random that could not be targeted or destroyed by the West. So that's why these vehicles were made. This technology is completely redundant in the modern day because the United States has pretty much geosynchronous satellites across the entirety of the Russian Federation that take pictures in real time. So we are literally tracking at every moment of every day every single Russian mobile transport erector launcher is what they're called, the TEL. We're watching every single one of them and where they are and what they're doing every day. So there's no such thing as a covert launch from this because it's not like we don't know where these vehicles are. We always know where they are at this point because of our geosynchronous satellites in orbit looking right down the Russian Federation all day, every day. But moving on.
But it would not be like a classic dictatorship nuclear style test unless they had them rolling around like this. And you got to admit, from the propaganda value, being able to like truck them around like some type of like toy or prize or something like that, it gives a little bit of shock value to it. I guess if you're like compared to looking at it into a silo or something.
Man, honestly, I guess it does, but still at the same time, it's like that's completely redundant. It's like, honestly, it would be better if we were speaking about nuclear deterrence to get rid of these and invest in nuclear ballistic missile submarines, because that would be far more effective at stealth and surprise than these ever would be at this point, because, satellites, as far as I understand, really aren't able to pierce through the depths of the oceans and spot submarines yet. We're probably working on that ability at this point. But moving on from that, and out of that little bit of news, it does appear that the Russians are getting a little bit nukey. They're just trying to, remind everyone that they have them. But a lot of people are talking about the Russian Federation, everything that they did today with the Oreshnik that blew up and failed, and then also the little deal with the covert nuke launch trials. And a lot of people are wondering, are the Russians just saber-rattling? And a lot of people are saying yes, and some are saying that's really a direct threat instead. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so it looks like 60% of the audience said yes, it's simply more saber rattling by the Ruskies, while 24% said no, it's a real direct threat, and 9% said it really seems like nothing at all. And I will say it is something, but I would not go as far as to say it should be like a real direct threat. Once again, Russia always has the ability to launch nuclear weapons. That's nothing new. I would say it is just saber rattling, and generally they did this last year as well to send a message to the West. The one thing this does tell me, though, is apparently those talks not going so well, or otherwise they wouldn't be pulling out the nukes and driving them around the forest like this. So another sign that things are probably not going too well in the background. But once again, it's just saber rattling. It's the same old from the Russian Federation. But Enforcer, what say you?
Oh, it's just pure saber rattling. The Russian Federation knows at this point, probably with how the Oreshnik failed today, nuclear weaponry isn't really even a good thing for the Russians to lean on at this point, because while the Russians will have maybe a 50% efficiency rate at best at this point, the United States is going to have about a 90 or 95% efficiency rate with our nuclear missile launches. So I have a feeling at this point they're largely understanding they're on the back foot on everything conventional and nuclear, and they're really pulling at straws here to really try and make anyone scared of them or anyone even be intimidated. It's kind of like those people who try and hold something that they have over you, but you don't really give a damn at this point because they're assholes, and that just doesn't really work anymore because you know who they are. That kind of a deal. It's kind of like that with the Russians, and the United States simply does not care. And I'm glad that we don't, because it's good to know that we can face down bullies and largely countries that run their mouths too much, and make sure to remind them that they're not really in charge around here. It's the United States that's in charge around here. And so with that, we are going to be moving on from that little bit of news in the Russian Federation, just a little bit, and we're going to be moving on down into a little bit more news down in the Kursk Oblast. So many people were saying, oh, the Ukrainians, they're cooked. I remember that. Some pro-Ukrainian people were saying that, but we're world news. I'm pro-American and pro-Western. We speak it as it is. We tell the story straight. People said Ukraine was cooked in the Kursk Oblast. The Russians were pushing them back, and there's just nothing that they can do. They're about to be pushed out. That's what a lot of people actually were saying a little while ago. But today, something crazy happened. Now, the Ukrainian front line exists like this as of right now, but earlier this morning, the Ukrainian forces had actually been fighting at Makhnovka, which is kind of a suburb of Sudzha, and just a little bit south. It only is, let me make sure to measure from the most southerly point of Sudzha, about a mile away from the outskirts of Sudzha, so the Russians had actually gotten somewhat close to the town of Sudzha and the main anchor point of the Ukrainian defensive that is now happening inside of Kursk. Today, the Ukrainians did something that was unbelievable. They ended up conducting an offensive, and we were able to hear that there was a massive amount of new innovations, at least tactically, that were used by the Ukrainians in this area. During the Kursk operation, the Ukrainian SOF, the Special Operations Forces, for the first time used tactical groups, psychological operations units, the resistance movement, and drones in a comprehensive manner in coordination with friendly units of the defense forces. As Russia continued to launch high-profile airstrikes on the Sumy region in June of 2024, a small SOF groups entered enemy lines in the Kursk region of the Russian Federation. As the main units of the Ukrainian army advanced deep in the Kursk region, special forces groups and the SOF resistance movement conducted raid operations, ambushes, and sabotage operations in the enemy lines, blowing up bridges and crossings. And we were able to hear that a lot of those new revolutionary tactics, which would seem fairly mundane for our Western armies, were finally being used by the Ukrainians today to great effect in the offensive effort that was going on near Makhnovka today. And these are some archival clips from what was going on during the latter part of last year when they first conducted the offensive. But from what we saw today, things went really well. The Ukrainians conducted this offensive for approximately 4 to 5 hours, from what I was able to gather, and they were able to advance from the very outskirt of Makhnovka all the way into the center of Ulyanovsk, claiming about 4.5 miles in around 4 to 5 hours, meaning that the Ukrainian offensive advanced approximately a little over a mile every single hour during the offensive and their movement. This is breakneck speed. It pretty much is average for most militaries to move about 10 miles a day in an incredibly good offensive. An offensive that's meeting practically no resistance can move about 20 miles a day. Moving 5 miles or 4.5 miles in about 4 to 5 hours is incredibly good. That is about as good as it gets. That's in fact showing, at least in terms of offensive abilities, the Ukrainians were practically facing no resistance after they broke the Russian lines at the first contact near Makhnovka and then practically advanced unopposed all the way down to Ulyanovsk. This has claimed a massive area front for the Ukrainians within this direction and is once again putting the Russians back on the fringe, as they're not really able to hold back the Ukrainians at this point in the area, and they're mostly trying to reorganize their front line and reorganize defensive positions around the towns of Borky and also Nizhny Makovo. We have also been able to see some footage of that today as well, as Russian equipment was being destroyed quite significantly by Ukrainians. All right, well, that blew out my eardrums. That was, wow, oh my. That was loud. Like, that was incredibly loud. But we can see them knocking out Chinese go-karts. A
whole lot of smashing. Look at that. Look at that.
Man, I'm not seeing a whole lot of donkeys, but we're about to be seeing them after the Ladas are gone. It's about to start popping up in Kursk as well. And we can also see here a little buhanka trying to make... Oh, actually, that's a lot of Neva. It's a lot of no more now. Ooh.
Oh, man. Oh, that one got a board through the front. Look at that. A beam.
I guess you could say that they were just dead bored.
Oh.
Oh,
my.
Oh, my. But we can see them also hitting a couple of other additional Russian vehicles as well.
Oh, look. A makeshift bunker. It was.
And it was, but it isn't. We see them here cook. Oh, there they go. They're running from the bunker.
Nice and steamed, like rice.
Oh, right through that go-kart. And here comes another. Double tap. Oh, call in a drone strike. And it looks like they did. And here comes another one right on a buhanka. Holy moly. And here comes another one right on another buhanka. That one had an electronic warfare jammer on it, and it doesn't look to have worked. We now see them flying one right into a shed.
Oh, no. They had the buhanker literally parked right in the shed opening. Yeah, man, I said it so southern. They had that buhanker honked right there in the shed.
Man, when you see a couple of them together, man, call that a set of buhankers or something like that. It's
my God.
And we can see them now.
What are we looking at here?
I don't even know. It looks like some sort of like a subterranean kind of a small little bunker. Oh, that's an ATV for sure. Oh, wait a minute. They gave it a pass. They gave it one pass over just to get him a little scared. Oh, no. Oh, he didn't make it.
Oh, my goodness. What happened?
I don't even know what that was, but that did not look good.
Here's man on the run. Wow, they were carrying like bags of junk on the top.
Man, I'm telling you. Oh, man, I'm telling you. But we can see them here hitting another Chinese ATV. Ole mole. And another one. Holy moly. Holy smokes.
This guy already has the door open. Look at that. He's trying to jump out while the things move. It's like putting the brakes on or something.
Man, he was ready to bail, but he didn't know that the Ukrainians were about to put his tail in the county jail. And they got him. And they're about to get another one.
Man, they put them Ruskies, they put their tail in the county jail.
Man, I'm trying to think of something else that would fit better. it's like, oh man, I can't think of anything actually, sadly.
It eludes me.
It eludes me.
I like how they put up some scrub brush in front of this, like, okay, this will hide it, not this big, like, giant schnoz, like, of a turret, like, you know, hanging out here.
Hold up. I know this one, folks. I know this one. That is a T-62M. You know, one of those Cold War edition main battle tanks, like this one right here. Cold War.
Oh, you mean
era.
like one of those ones that should probably be retired by now?
One of the ones that's obsolete by now. There it is again.
Oh, what a shock. Man, I'm telling you what, these things right here, they should have been put in a museum. They probably were in a museum where they got them from.
Probably. I mean, actually, I wouldn't doubt that at all, really. That's probably true. But it looks like it's now going to be smoldering wreckage on the front. So there we go. And, oh, holy moly. These are so
all the
old.
Russian tank museums from this point forward will just have like destroyed like hunks of these tanks, like the carcass, dragged back into the museum.
Dude, it's going to be like those museums about extinct animals. They're going to be like, there once were tanks that would roam Russia in great herds, and now they are no more. You know, something like that. It'll be something like that in each museum. Very sad sort of a deal for the Russians, but a great deal for Ukraine. And we also got to see some Russian drones being destroyed as well. And we got to see another Lancet with another cheap Timu propeller pushing it on along. The Ukrainians generally take great offense to these things and knock them out pretty quick. Oh
Dear, a Houthi. One of these strange bladed drone things. Gotta take him out.
Man, in Ukraine, they don't call it sunburn, they call it sunstrike, because the sun hits you, like it actually just assaults you. But moving on from that, and from that little clip right there, it is time for us to talk a little bit more about what's going on out there in the world. As Ukraine launched that major surprise offensive in Russia's Kursk region today, that was wildly successful, mind you, the best that there ever was. It was the greatest. Some people said, wow, that's a great offensive. I guess you could never see it succeed like that, and it really couldn't. It was just an absolutely great one. No one's seen any better. And a lot of people are wondering, will it succeed? And a lot of people are saying, about half of everyone is saying that it will succeed fast. Some people are saying it will be a slow success. And others are saying that they're a little unsure and undecided. But Matthew, what are people thinking about this? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so 53% said yes, this offensive in Kursk will succeed very fast, while 23% said it'll be a slow burning success, and 8% said no, this one will fail again. And I would say generally it's already succeeding. Like, this thing's moving fast, and we actually saw that earlier today on the short war video as well. We saw it was moving rapid, and we found out even further toward the stream here that it's moving even faster than expected. So it looks like it's doing well, and the Russians are making every excuse under the sun as to why they're not repelling this successfully. They're saying their drones can't be launched because of the weather. They're saying some of their comrades got sick and had to sit the day out. All kinds of excuses running around. Even the Chechens are trying to make excuses for it. So everybody got caught off guard once again, and it looks like the Ukrainians might make some real headway with this new offensive. It's got the Russians really rattled. So I'm with the 54%. But Enforcer, what say you?
Man, today when the offensive succeeded, Putin was like, we're sending cows to Mars. That's actually something he said today, by the way. I'm not even kidding.
No joke.
Yeah, like legit. Like there's a clip of him out there saying, can we send cows to Mars? Maybe cats, dogs, pigs, you know, stuff like that. I was like, what the hell is he talking about? But anyways, moving on from that, he legitimately said that today. No joke. He was like, can we send the cows to Mars? Kadyrov, how is Suja doing? Are we pushing the Ukrainians out? And then Kadyrov went, Don, I have a sick note, Don. I had the flu. Like, something like that. He's like,
yeah, I have his doctor's note, blood. And it has it smacked out of his hand. I don't care. Oh, man. They remember they were eating lunch the last time Kursk got invaded. those Chechens and their excuses, I tell you.
Man, Putin's about to say, I mean, so instead of sending cows to Mars, what if we threw this dog out of a window? You know, something like that. He's gonna be, But beyond that, it went poorly, and it looks like the offensive is going fairly well. Once again, though, I do want to make this fairly clear. At this point, we're not expecting any massive offensive victories from either side. I'll be entirely honest. This is actually big for this point in the war to advance 4 miles in a single day. That's actually significant. No one's ever been able to do that for about a half year at this point or longer. So at this point, I actually would say that the Ukrainians have already pulled off a really successful offensive compared to the standard put out at this point in the war, but I'm still not really expecting any kind of a massive strategic victory out of this offensive because neither side really has the firepower ability to do that to each other at this point. So big thing, it was an amazing thing to see today, but it's probably not going to be much more than that over the next few days. I could be proven wrong, and that would be delightfully so if I was proven wrong, but at this point I think that's largely what would stand. But moving on, because also, by the way, I do want to throw this out, the Institute for the Study of War, which does incredibly good analysis, did say that right now there really is no way to create a major offensive victory on the battlefield in Ukraine for either side, but in the future it certainly could change, especially on the Ukrainian side if Western support continues in full, which we know at this point it will. But moving on from that and into the remaining piece of news that we have in the Kursk Oblast, we were able to see this Challenger 2, which is just cool. I like Challenger 2s. I think they're really neat. They're British, and it just makes it cool for that reason because this is Britain's MBT. It's also the only tank in NATO at this point that uses a rifled barrel instead of a smoothbore barrel for its main gun, and that's because the British like using HESH rounds, which are high explosive squash heads. So what they do, and also this is why it has to be rifled, high explosive squash heads aerodynamically don't really do that well without some sort of spin, so they need the rifling in the cannon's main barrel to give that HESH round some centrifugal force so that way it can keep itself more steady in flight. But what happens is that the HESH round, like the actual front of it, hits the side of a tank's armor and it flattens out. Like it actually, like all this happens in a split second, but the HESH round actually flattens out along the side of that turret or that armor, wherever it is, and then it explodes. So it exerts a lot of that explosive pressure over a wider area of the surface of the armor. And what that does, it actually doesn't punch through the tank. It actually causes the armor to bend inwards, which creates spalling, which are these little pieces of shrapnel that come out of the tank's armor itself when it fractures like that. So what it does is it kills the crew for the large part because of the spalling inside the tank, but it really doesn't do much damage to the tank beyond that. So it's a pretty cool thing, the HESH round is, but nowadays a lot of people have been questioning its efficacy. And a lot of countries have moved to the smoothbore barrels, which are much better and much more efficient for firing armor-piercing, fin-stabilized, discarding saber rounds, which are these tungsten darts that are fired out of the tank main gun, and then literally punch straight through the enemy tank's armor like a dart. That's largely how those work in very simple form. But moving on from that, really neat tank to see. Love to see them. And the Ukrainians don't have a lot of them, so it's kind of like seeing a unicorn. But moving on from that, we're going to be moving out of Ukraine just for a brief moment to take you on down into the middle of the East. Or really, this is the Far East at this point in Iran. That's technically not even the Middle East. But we're still going to call it the Middle East because that's what everyone calls it. Why change it? But moving on from that and down to Bandar Abbas, we were able to hear that Abu Hassan and his 40 thieves have constructed a new vessel today, and they have launched it. And it was one hell of a vessel straight out of the Bandar Abbas naval yards. It is not a good one. I'm not even gonna build this one up sarcastically. This thing is just terrible and it's god ugly. I don't even think I think that God's eye had to have not been looking on Iran when this thing was being built, because it is an affront to everything living. It's an affront to everything alive. Here it is. This is the drone ship that they launched today. This is technically Iran's. Oh, ow!
Oh my God, that's bad. That's so bad. Get it off the screen. It's so nasty.
Well, if you really want to see it, oh my God.
Oh, what the hell is it made out of, though?
Turn off the lights. Turn off the lights. We don't want to see this thing.
Why
Oh,
is it like painted plywood on the deck?
it's pretty much plywood. They like built this fake superstructure over the side to create an angled deck, but their aircraft carrier design is so stupid they don't understand the angled deck is actually supposed to be leading you off the bow of the vessel, not towards it. Like, so let me go show y'all that. Let me go show y'all the Nimitz flight deck, because this is probably the best one that we have as an example of an angled flight deck. So let's see if we can get top down. Here we go. So y'all see how the flight deck is angled right here to where it's not going towards the bow of the ship, it's actually going towards the side? There's a very specific reason for that. It's because when a plane fails to catch the arresting wires landing on a carrier, there is something that generally will happen at that point. It will not have enough thrust or speed to actually be able to take back off. So what happens is that the plane harmlessly slides off the side of the vessel, away from its direction of travel, and then splashes into the ocean, allowing for them to recover the crew and also allowing for the aircraft to possibly maybe be recovered, but really the honest truth is that that's highly unlikely, if not impossible, especially considering that an aircraft carrier has to keep up a pretty decent speed so that there's a strong enough headwind for the aircraft to land on deck. So anyways, moving on from that, the angle of this flight deck is crucial to the carrier's operations. Back in the day, back in World War II, we used to actually have, like with the original USS Enterprise in World War II, which is CV6 right here, we had straight flight decks. So the flight deck took up the entire length of the ship. Problem is that if you didn't catch the arresting wires and the aircraft went over the front of the ship, it's right in the path of the ship, so it gets run over, and usually the crew of that plane would get caught in the wash of the propellers, and then they get killed. So that was a huge issue. That's why we created the angled flight deck, to avoid that kind of issue or safety concern. So the Iranians said, what if we had the drones land from the side, off the side of the ship, and then we had them go plunging straight over the front of the ship and into the bow, so that way they can get run over by the ship if the drone fails to catch the arresting wires. This is a terrible thing. Like, this is just a terrible design all the way around.
Also, by the way, I see our in-house resident naval expert, Walter A. Lakota Jr. He said, tell the Enforcer that looks like a commercial container ship mocked up to look like a drone carrier. I would honestly have to say that, Walter, I'm no naval expert like you, but just looking at the thing, I don't know if that's actually plywood on the deck or not, but this thing clearly looks like it's been patched up to be something that it's not. That overhang on the side looks to have really hardly any support at all over there. We can barely see underneath there, that little overhang spot, but that does not look well supported. And also the tower, like the whatever this little piece is here, like where they control the ship from, was that the conning tower that they call that or something?
I suppose. I call it the superstructure.
Yeah, the superstructure, that looks like it's not even like matching like this plywood like base of a ship that they've got going here. And also, what is that large pallet of stuff at the back that's covered up? Like, what is that, like supplies or food or something?
I don't really know what this is, but these are actually some sort of I think an air defense system for the vessel, some sort of a actually, I don't know. Those don't really look like a comparable air defense system to anything we have here in the West, or even anything in Russian use. I don't know what the hell those are. That actually could be anti-ship missile launchers, which would be incredibly bizarre, considering that this thing is a modified cargo ship. And oh, by the way, I do have to tell y'all that this is actually, Walter E. Lakota is dead on the nail. This is a modified container ship. Originally, it was a container ship, but what the Iranians did is that they removed any of the supporting superstructure that would help to keep those containers in place on the front and aft of the vessel, or the fore and aft of the vessel, and they flattened it out so that way they could construct this shitty flight deck on top of that, and that's why it looks like a container ship. That's also why the superstructure is centrally based on the vessel and isn't off to one side or the other, is because it was a container ship. So it actually is a converted container ship. We actually covered this a good while ago, and that is entirely true, because we found the specific container ship that this was, and it literally was the ship. It just had containers on it when the picture was taken. This thing is horrendous. And also,
Okay. You can clearly see right here. This is definitely a container ship, like from the front. Like it's obvious from the front angle. Also, look, you can get a view of the overhang, like for once. That thing does not look supported. I'm no structural expert and I'm no naval expert, but it looks like they've got some type of like tubing or like some type of pylon, thin little rods hanging out there, and yeah, girders or something trying to hold that entire overhang where very heavy drones and aircraft are going to be sitting, which seems like a bad idea.
Oh my god. Dude, if a tough wave goes up the side of, like, this side of the vessel up into that, I have a feeling that might buckle. Like, I think that might actually just fall off the side of the ship.
It might. It could very well just fall right off the side and just go plunk right in the water.
Man, imagine if this thing ran into rough seas. They'd probably be stupid enough to not have meteorological forecasts and know what kind of weather this vessel's heading into. So it'll head into like a typhoon or something at some point, and that thing will just be sheared clean off the side. Like the vessel will survive because it's a seafaring vessel of kind of a modern variety. It would survive, but it sure as hell this Angle flight deck will not be surviving that venture right there for sure. But yeah, this thing is horrendous. It's not going to be doing much. It's not really much at all to even look at, to be entirely honest. Oh, it's bad. It's just so bad. It's the worst thing ever. And also, another thing, I don't really get the premise behind this thing. So it's a drone carrier, big whoop. It's like, that doesn't really do much for them. Because it's like, when in the world is Iran power projecting anywhere in the world for this thing to even be useful?
It's just for show, I think. Like, and honestly, the show is pretty damn bad. Like, they can take this show on the road at this point.
Man, I'm telling you, man, this is the traveling circus. Like this is like the traveling
Barnum and
circus.
Bailey, they're back again. They're resurrected, but they're in Iran this time.
Dude, they're going to sit there and say, we have a traveling adventure to show you all. We have the Shahid Bakri, or something like that. It's like, we're going to go all the way around the world with this thing and show it to all the people of the world. It's like, I don't think they want to see it. I think they wanted to go home. It's terrible. And also, let's see. Walter Lakota actually said the ship is very unstable and it could do what's called a rollover. I do know what a rollover is. It's pretty much where the ship can tilt a little bit too far over to the side and literally just flips upside down, where the bottom of the hull is facing upwards and the entire ship is actually facing down towards the bottom of the sea. I think we actually can find ship rollover. Let me see if I can find you all a picture of this. Let's see here. I want a good example of this. Good example. Oh, come on. They keep on showing the Francis Scott Key Bridge incident. It's like, that's not a rollover, that's just a collision. The Costa Concordia, I guess, is a fairly okay example. There it is. That's kind of a rollover a little bit. But there were very good examples of rollovers in Pearl Harbor. I think there was a couple, actually. And I think one of them still is rolled over in Pearl Harbor, and they just could not recover it, so they left it. It's not as famous as the USS Arizona, which just sank straight down onto its keel. But this is the USS Utah, which I believe did roll over, and they tried to lift it back up, and they just couldn't, so they left it there, and it's still there to this day. Let's see here. Let me see if I can find any. Okay, yeah, those were the only two battleships that were unsalvageable, I believe. Might be wrong. And also, ooh, look at those LHDs. Ooh, look at that.
Oh wow! Oh, a real ship. Look at Iran. They're looking at this like, oh look, it's a real ship. Something for once that we do not have.
It is a real ship, a long-lasting ship, and we also have the Pan Am landing site, which looks to be in disrepair, much like the company. But nevertheless, still a fairly interesting thing to see here, and of course, fairly interesting to note that they finally have their drone carrier up. I congratulate them, and I hope that they have a great time watching this thing sink when the U.S. bombs it here probably in a month. But moving on from that, and out of that bit of news, it appears that not only are the Iranians being treated like a joke today, because of the launch of that vessel, which is pretty horrendous, we also got to see the Saudi Arabians are treating the Houthis like a joke. They started firing toss rockets at the Houthis, and here's one of the clips of them firing the thermobaric rockets right there. I'm going to end the clip right there and show you all the end result a little bit later on, where we got to see the impacts on Houthi positions, and they were loud and very very raucous. Here's the clip. These are Saudi Arabian soldiers filming the toss impacts. Holy moly.
Damn. They didn't fire them very far.
No. Dude, they were like, give the mini Houthi some of the Krabby Patty with a secret sauce. And then hit them with the toss. Like, damn. Like, honestly, I don't think any of those Houthis were making it out of that one. And generally, the plan is to disperse Houthi buildups along the Saudi Arabian border and to largely disperse them. I think they're dispersing them in pieces across the wide area at this point with that kind of an impact. Like, I think it's succeeding, but not really in the original kind of like overview kind of a way. I think they're being spread far and wide in pieces. But moving on from that and out of that little bit of news, we are going to be moving on from the Middle East and back on up into Ukraine, because we still have a lot of news, and actually big news to cover from throughout the area. But before we move on into that, you all know that loads of people have been talking in the chat. I mean, a lot. Right now, we've had at least several tens of thousands of live chats come in at this point, and I want to make sure that we can get to a couple, especially the folks who are supporting the stream tonight with super chats that don't have to. They're going out of their way to do so. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so our first super chat of the night is going to go to a channel legend. It is Waba, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Waba, for helping to keep the stream going very strong. Well into day 1079, and we appreciate that very much. And I do not see a comment attached, so it is simply a super sticker. Thanks. I messed that all up. I don't even know what I was saying there, but thank you very much, Waba, for that support, and we appreciate it. And Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you so much for the massive support, Waba, and helping this channel to keep on running. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support is absolutely incredible, and we thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this channel rolling day in and day out. Sometimes that is very easy. Sometimes that's tough. And today is one of those days that's kind of in the middle, to be entirely honest with y'all. But folks like you help us to make it possible, no matter what kind of a day we're having, to be able to say that we are able to pay our bills and keep our lights on so that we can do this as a full-time job. And I gotta thank you so much once again for that, because it means a great deal to us that we can always count on the channel to support the enforcers and to help us to be able to keep this thing running and live on air. And of course, we hold that very dearly, as we always make sure as much as we can to be on air 6 days a week without breaking the schedule, and making sure to get y'all all of the massive news that's coming out each and every day. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again, Waba. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat goes to Dustin Mayo, yet another channel legend who's been around the channel for ages. And thank you very much, Dustin, for the $20 support as well. And he said, are any of the Russian missiles working?
Yes, they are working. It's just that it's not a high number of them. As far as we know, and of course I'm only going to speak about the statistics we have, and the rest we have to kind of speculate on, but with the Sarmat, it appears that it has a near 80% failure rate, which is incredibly high, mind you. That's like the complete opposite of what you would want. You usually would want an 80% success rate. They have an 80% failure rate on the Sarmat, at least in all of the test launches so far. One of them blew up and literally devastated the entire launch pad and turned it into a crater, so I'd assume that that one is most likely going to fail if they ever try and use it. Only 1 in every 5 would actually make it to its target or deploy its MIRVs or MARVs. But beyond that, the Oreshnik is also doing pretty bad as well. Out of its 2 combat launches that we've seen so far, one of them has succeeded and one of them has failed. So at this point, with all the information that we have and data, 50% of the launches are failures. So that means that 1 in every 2 Oreshniks will not make it to their target and will explode before they even deploy the MIRV. So with that in mind, Russian nuclear weaponry generally is not doing well. If we were to take the Sarmat as our strategic example of a nuclear weapon, we would generally be able to extrapolate that most of them would fail. Out of the 400 or so that they have, only about 75 of them or so, or less, would actually make it to the United States or to their targets wherever they may be. Out of all of the tactical nuclear weapons that they have, or semi-strategic weapons that they have, like the Oreshnik, most likely half of those would fail, or even higher numbers than that would fail, because once again, only 2 launches is a small pool to go off of. It could be that this failure was a fluke, or it could be that this failure is actually the norm. But going off of the information that we have right now, it appears that Russian nuclear weapons are usable. It's just that hardly any of them really are. But the ones that are usable are, of course, going to hit. It's just that most of them appear that they will not be able to make it to their target and be entirely effective. Not really something that you want, considering that your conventional army is going to being deployed mules. You really don't want to start showing that the nuclear weaponry also is a field that you're not really doing that well in. Pretty sad deal overall. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that incredibly well, at least the best I can. And thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And that was an incredibly good question, by the way. One that we have gotten a lot recently, but especially now with the numbers and data that we have on all of the launches and failures that we've seen, we can say that it actually is, with definitive certainty, a high chance that most of their missiles would fail before they make it to their target. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best we can. We can only do the best we can. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the final question of the night. And so, Matthew, not the final question of the night. What am I talking about? I'm getting distracted over here. What is going on? It is not the final question of the night, folks. We got so much more to go. But what is the final question of this segment so that way we can get right back on into the news?
All right, so this one, the last one, is going to go to Point of Guinness, who's of course another channel legend. We have
Hey!
3 channel legends in a row during the first segment, and Point of Guinness put in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Point of Guinness, for the support and helping to keep us running. And they said that the Russians won't be riding donkeys next week; they will be short-term eating them instead. Donkey hot pot for 10,000 rubles a serving.
Dang. Man, that is absolutely unfortunate. But I do have to say that much to our misfortune, kind of like the Russians, I guess you could say that we have to deal with our asses from time to time. Am I right, Matthew?
Oh, what the? Man, that scared the hell out of me. Man. What the hell?
Man, I'm telling you,
Gave me
man.
mini heart attack there. I was starting to do the imitation myself, and then I heard the real deal. I was like, I'm hearing things, man. I'm hearing things.
Man, but there it is. Some people would say that might be Russia's logistical future. I call it food. That's probably what they're going to turn into at this point, is that they're going to turn into some donkey hot pockets. And boy, howdy, are those things hot. But beyond
Man,
that,
those poor donkeys. I like the donkeys, man. I hope they don't get hurt.
I think they're very precious animals. I think they are. Like, they always seem well-tempered whenever I've seen one in real life, which hasn't been often. Unfortunately, we get to see a lot of asses often, not a lot of donkeys. But nevertheless, man, you know it. You know it more than I do today. But nevertheless, these donkeys are something else. Hopefully we won't see that they will be eaten, but the chances are is that they will be eaten. The Russians don't really get a lot of food, and not only that, these things are going to be practically ineffective for carrying the amount of supplies that a modern army needs. So you need an egregiously massive amount of donkeys. And still at this point they're not going to have those, so the strategic the logistical situation is just hopeless at this point, so they'll probably end up eating them. So with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion, because I think you're right on them being eaten. And are these things I was about to say, are these things chewing on a propane tank? I was like, that doesn't seem good. I thought that was a propane tank, honestly, man, with like that little top to it.
Honestly, it looks like one of those kettlebell weights that you can use to like work out, but they're eating off of one. Kind of interesting.
Man, that's it. I don't know what to make of that one. But what other pictures of donkeys do we have? Let's see here. Oh, look at these. These are very chill.
Man, I like those donkeys. They seem like a nice animal. I've heard they can be stubborn though, but rather than that, they look like they're pretty nice, pretty chill animal.
Man, I'm telling you. But just, oh, look at that one. It's near a cliff.
Man, that one's losing it, man.
Oh, man. Like someone we know. But nevertheless, absolutely interesting to note. And of course, it's going to be very sad to see that some of the donkeys are eaten. And most likely, the ones that aren't eaten will be targeted by the Ukrainians because they're still moving supplies, and that makes them a target. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Also, everyone's saying that it's a salt block. I've never seen a salt block like that. Our salt blocks that we used to get were legitimately just blocks. Like, they were just white blocks of salt that kind of had, like, blackish texturing through them. And then I think some of them were pink. But I've never seen one like that had a handle made onto it. Ours were, like, the ultra-budget, great-value salt blocks. They were literally just cubes. Like, giant cubes, for that matter. But anyways, moving on from that. And let's see here. I see some stubborn like the Russians. Also, if you said, donkey once sneezed in my face, that doesn't sound great. I have a feeling that would be quite nasty indeed. But moving on from that, it is time for us to get on into the remainder of the news. We have some big news coming out of Western Ukraine today, as the French have announced that the first Mirage 2000 has arrived. This is, I believe, an Argentinian Mirage 2000, but we were able to hear today from Sebastian Lecornu that on the 6th of February, I'm assuming that's February in French, 2024, the president of France has announced the arrival of the Ukrainian Mirage 2000 from France. Let's see, the premiere of it shall be in Ukraine incredibly soon, I'm assuming. I can't really read French that well, but I'm trying my best here. Let's see. The
élabore le pilotos ukrainiens la forme pendant France. Oh, oh, yeah.
All right. Well, I think Matthew did it better than I
That
could.
summed it up. Hey, that summed it up.
Man, I think he did well, but nevertheless, they are going to be in Ukraine. They're going to help out the Ukrainian Air Force, and Ukrainian pilots will fly these Mirage 2000s. But they're not just any Mirage 2000s, and they're not actually the Mirage 2000Cs, which were originally floated back in the day. These are the Mirage 2005Fs, which are a very nice variety of Mirage 2000, some of the most advanced and modern Mirage 2000s in French service today. And let me go get y'all a picture. This is a Mirage 2000D. These are the ones that do ground support. And so I've heard that some French pilots have called this one, when it's in close air support missions, giving them the D. But we've also been able to see that down here, like, that was cheesy. Like, that was actually very cheesy. But we also get to see down here, and let me go get it. This is Hellenic Air Force. This is a Greek Air Force, Mirage 2005F. But these are incredibly advanced. These are able to use the wide variety of French air-to-air missiles that are available in the modern day, including France's version of the AIM-120, which is an incredibly interesting one, mind you, because it excels in some ways, doesn't really in others, but that is the Mika. This is the Mika EM, or the ER. This is the missile for France. This is their AMRAAM for the large part. It's quite comparable to the AIM-120, but this one actually excels in closer in engagements compared to the AIM-120. The AIM-120 really excels at the longest ranges of around 70 to 80 miles or so. The Mika excels in ranges less than 40 miles, but it still does incredibly well in those beyond visual range engagements that are out to 70 miles. It's just that you really get the best performance out of this thing less than 40 miles away. It's really more of what has been explained these days as the dogfighting AMRAAM. Not because you're actually dogfighting when you are using this missile, just because it's a lot closer than any other normal AMRAAM, where this thing is the most efficient. But still, the Mirage 2005Fs that Ukraine is being provided with right now can actually use the Mikas. You can also see the CAM ER, which I've never heard of before. I've only heard of the... Oh, wait, hang on. I think this is the modern me. Oh, you know what? I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm probably going to sound really dumb on that one. But still, it is nice to know, and they will have to add soon to the Ukrainians that they are also using the Mikas as well, because the Mirage 2000s that will be in Ukrainian service will most likely be used with Mikas and Mirage 2s on board. That is actually a Super Matra 530F right there. That kind of looks like a Mika, but it's not. But anyways, moving on from that and on into our next clip, our next big piece of news. We were able to hear from Zelenskyy today. Well, actually, before we move on, we also were able to hear, I forgot to throw this in because I don't have a bulletin for it, but the Netherlands is also providing more F-16s of the A model that have been modified to the C model in terms of computer abilities to the Ukrainians as well today. And a lot of people have been talking about the French Mirages and the Dutch F-16s being provided to Ukraine today. A lot of people are wondering, will this make a big difference or not? And Matthew, what are people thinking about this, and what are you thinking about it as well?
So one thing between the Ukrainians and the Russians they have in common, they're both seeing mirages, but the Ukrainians' mirages are real and the Russians are not real. 61% said yes, they will make a big difference, while 31% said no, it will simply help a little, while 3% said it will make no difference. And I can assure you all that getting brand new fighter jets, both a French variant and the F-16 variants, those will be a big help. Now, I don't think they're going to be like, game-changing, to use that cliche word all the time, but they will make a difference. They will help a little. So I'm with the 31%. I think it will do some good. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, I believe that they're going to do some decent good in air defense, but we've never really seen the F-16s that have been provided so far really being used in anything outside of air defense of Ukraine's skies. So I have a feeling that their actual impact on the ground situation in Ukraine, on the front lines, would be fairly limited. But in terms of providing a shield of air defense over the skies of Ukraine, they probably will end up being fairly efficient in that role. So I have a feeling that they will make a significant difference in the air defense, because they'll once again be creating that iron shield over Ukraine's skies that they use the ground batteries and the aircraft to create. But I don't think that it'll really be changing the strategic situation. I don't know why I turned Swedish there. I said it don't. I don't know why I said that, but I don't think it'll really be changing the frontline situation much, because we've never really seen any of the F-16s being used in that kind of a capacity yet. So I think the Mirages will also be held back as well, much like the F-16s. So with that, we are going to be moving on from that little bit of news in Western Ukraine and on into a statement that Zelenskyy made today, saying that the President of the United States actually has no peace plan. According to Zelenskyy, he said, "The President of the United States still has no official plan to end the war." And he also said, There is no official plan yet. What is in various publications? I am sure that this is not the president's official plan. Because apparently
You
Ukraine...
know, I think first good step to end war is probably not to launch Oreshnik at Kiev. First step.
They launch Oreshniks at Kiev. They terrorize our people. And then they want to talk about peace. I will tell you that the only real piss they'll get is the piss on their head. Like, or something like that. Just like, I'll tell you that. I will be entirely honest with all of you that they are not going to be getting anywhere with this Oreshnik fearing. Because I will tell you, the only Oreshnik that will be happening is on Putin, because they are going to Oresht him.
Yeah.
You see what I did? Like,
You know, the only concept of a plan that I have here is probably telling the Russians to take a hike, because honestly, Putin's still acting like a clown, and he's not withdrawing his forces, and he's not even negotiating fairly. No sign at all of him being fair, and also he's still making an ass out of himself on a daily basis, and now he's trying to launch nuclear-capable missiles at the capital city of Ukraine. That sounds like somebody you probably can't negotiate with, so no wonder there's no peace plan, because there probably is no plan to even entertain at all, like in reality.
that's the truth of it. Let's all cut through the interference that y'all are hearing out there. Let's get to the reality of it. There is no peace plan being presented by the President of the United States right now or the Russian Federation. Any public statements that talks are even being done seems to be fictitious. Everything in the background in the Russian government and their actions that they're taking, and everything in the background for the United States and the actions we're taking, are showing that this war is going on well through the remainder of this year. And so for that reason, there is no point in even really considering seriously that a peace talk is coming around soon. That's really why Zelenskyy is saying this, because it looks like American news companies are really grasping at straws to make it look like there is a peace plan, but the reality is that there probably isn't one at all, because everyone can clearly tell the Russians are not wanting to end this war, and that they're just going to keep it going. But moving on from that, and out of that little bit of news, it is time for us to get on into those location unknowns. And we have, like, none of them. We only had, like, one. And then we also got to have the Russian casualty report. But we got to see some Ukrainian soldiers on the move. And, man, a little bizarre looking with it covered in snow.
It's like a semi-clean hellscape.
Kind of is. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also were able to see something fairly interesting here as well. And this was something that was very interesting, and the only reason why I'm stalling is because my YouTube control room just died again, and every time it's doing it now, it's doing this in this really horrendous and ugly way, where I kind of got to get a minute to just sit over there on the side and play around with it to get it back up. But anyways, now that we've got the control room back up and running, it's now time for us to show y'all the Russian casualty report. Holy moly!
Two Bobcats again. What is going on, man? It's literally, like Miss Disa said, it's a consistent daily loss lately. It's almost like a placeholder of sorts. It's the same thing every day, but tell us more.
Man, Zelenskyy sat there and said, "What is that? The enforcers are not able to talk about the Bobcats? Kirill Budanov, youth, I need you to get the SBU on this right now." Like, youth, of course. And then they blow up like 2 Bobcats a day, something like that. But beyond that, Miss DC, keeper of the records, was able to give us a general synopsis of the casualty report today. And troop losses are now in the low 1,300 range on average per week. Tanks are up again, and AFVs are near the 7-day average. 2 MLRSs and anti-air are a nice addition today, really helping us to see that spotty forecast of slight showers of lead that are falling on top of the Russians. 133 vehicles lost is the 10th highest daily loss, and 2 special equipment vehicles is consistent daily losses lately. And it is time for us to get on into that deep breakdown of what kind of losses they are taking. And so, let's get to it. 1,240 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed over the past 24 hours. An incredibly good number. 16 armored personnel carriers were destroyed as well. Quite nice. 133 supply trucks were destroyed. That is incredibly high. 18 main battle tanks destroyed. Very nice number. 46 artillery pieces were also knocked out, along with 83 drones, 2 MLRSs, 2 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and 2 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, it's an incredibly good day of losses, and we're very happy to see it, and I know everyone else is very happy to see it as well. Moving on from that and from the casualty reports, now time for us to get on into the remainder of the Ukrainian frontline news today, which not only was it exhilarating in Kursk to see, but it was exhilarating through most of the front. moving on into Vovchansk, we got to see that some Russian prisoners of war were
И,
taken.
пожалуйста, поляныця.
We have Bilbo Baggins and Frodo here from Lord of the Rings to be prisoners of the Ukrainian armed forces and to be a part of the prisoner exchange on in the future.
Традиція така. Поляныця.
Frodo looking extra bewildered out here.
Поляныця.
He's going, I've got to get the ring to Mordor, you know, something like that. It's like,
Ага. Полуниця.
Полуниця.
Укрзалізниця.
this guy's repeating everything like it's a mystery. This guy's like, are you a part of the police? He's like, police? What's that? Like, it's like,
They told him, listen, if you ever get captured, no nothing. He said, yes, no nothing. And just repeating words back, talking about, yes, Kiev. Kiev, блядь, Kiev.
dude,
It's like, okay. It's like, thanks, buddy.
dude, they're like that with everything. They're like, what unit are you from? Unit? Is that like a system of currency? What vodka do you drink? Smirnoff.
Yeah, just straight on that one. No confusion on that one.
Я понял. Твоя очередь.
Ленезы.
Хорошо. Поляныця.
What you gotta say, Bilbo?
Полуниця.
I've got to get the ring to Mordor. You know, something like that.
Ясно, контакт, проехали. Давай, братан, твоя очередь.
What's that grey guy smoking on a pipe when you... What is that? Is
What
that a
the
squirrel with
hell
a
is-
gat back there on the wall?
Man, I wouldn't look at that too long.
Полуниця.
Полуниця.
Поляныця.
Поляниця.
Укрзалізниця.
This guy said, yes, I would like to come to the dentist, please. I need dental implants. No. Same on the teeth. I would like corn on the cob, please.
You know what this guy's facial expression is like?
What?
Хорошо.
You know when that salesman comes up to you and you don't really want to talk to the salesman, you have like that look on your face.
Oh,
like,
dude, yeah.
Please help.
Dude, it's like, hi, can we help you? No, I'm just looking around. Like, that's the face you make when you're like, I'm just looking around, man. Thank you, though. But moving on from that, we're now going to be moving on up into Strochina, where we got to see a Russian Zoo Park counter battery system being hit. I don't know why they're called Zoo Park. It just sounds silly. But here's the clip. We can see the Zoo Park counter battery system right there. It doesn't really look like it's countering any kind of battery. If it is, it's probably just double A's. It's not even that big of a deal. But we can see them now hitting the Zoo Park right there. Next thing you know, y'all, the labor union's going to show up to that Russian soldier at the end of that last clip, and they're going to go, look at this. They don't even have dental. Something like that.
No
man.
dental, no medical, no life, no benefits.
Dude, next thing you know, there's going to be some guy in Congress going, I will tell you something. They don't even provide dental. Something. It'll be something along those lines. I got to end every joke with that. That's kind of like my laugh track at this point. But we can see them.
They also don't provide weapons either anymore. They're running out of those too. They don't even provide equipment or vehicles now. They provide donkeys.
Yeah, something like that. Man, I always got to throw that in. It's like the laugh track. It just hides the lack of any laugh track at the end of that. It's the only way I can make myself feel better about making these jokes. Like, it's honestly, you know what I mean?
Man, we keep it real around here. We have no laugh track. When the joke falls flat, it falls flat.
Dude, it just drops dead. Like, honestly, at this point.
What do you think? This was Seinfeld or something?
Man, we honestly do need to add in a laugh track at this point. I'm just kidding, by the way. We're not adding in a laugh track. Like, that would really cheapen things up. And we're already cheap as it is. But moving on from that and down the line, we were able to see a Swedish SPG in action. An Archer firing a rocket-assisted smart round. And this Ukrainian soldier taking a picture in front of it very happily because he likes the Archer. And we all like the Archer because it's a Swedish invention of greatness. And it's based off of the Volvo dump trucks that you can sometimes see in construction sites here in the United States. So I think it's pretty neat. But moving on from that and that little picture, it's now time for us to move on down to Svatove, where we got to see the Russian Road of Death and a full 5 minutes of it. We see them making their way downtown. There's a destroyed Buhanka.
Also, real quick, let me make this announcement before I forget this for the night. The Greenland video will be coming out tomorrow, that I've been saying all week. It will be coming out tomorrow, as long as there's not a short war video to make. That's the only caveat. So it's ready to go. Like, it's on the computer right here, right now. It's also got the thumbnail and everything else for it. So it's coming. Don't worry, folks. A small little delay because of some sponsorship issues and things like that. So don't worry. It's coming.
It's coming. And also, we got a counter up here in the top right, Matthew. It counts every destroyed vehicle, and they also highlight them kind of in red, but it's a very light red, so you really have to pay attention to see it. But we're up to 6 so far on the road of death. 6 vehicles that have been destroyed so far. AF Compliance said they're on the highway to hell. I would sing it, but we might get copyright strike. I might just be that good at it. I'm just kidding.
Oh, no, I can assure you will never get copyright strike for that.
Oh, no.
We're safe.
Dude, they would be like, we don't own that. Like, we don't even want to claim it. That would be the reality. Logan Levine said, when's the Panama video? Due to things going on behind the scenes, the Panama video has been postponed a little, unfortunately. That always comes out, but hey, there's always something stupid going on. Oh, whoa, what the hell? They almost skid off the road. Did you see that?
No, back it up for a second.
They were like driving, la la. Oh, shit. Oh, like, oh my God.
Drifting, man. They're drifting out here.
Man. But getting back to the quick answer, there's always something stupid going on behind the scenes. And of course, something as stupid is going on right now. So we kind of have to just deal with that. And that's kind of put some things on a little bit of a weight. And that's one of them. So it's going to take a little bit longer than expected to get that out because of things. And I'm not going to go into it any more than that. So y'all can guess what those things are, what the stupid things are. But we're not going to be talking about that much farther. But anyways, moving on from that, we can see them still driving down the road. The count has gotten up to 20 vehicles at this point. And it still keeps climbing. We're only about a minute into this clip, about a minute and a half, and we're already up to nearly 25 vehicles at this point.
Also, Wubba in the live chat said, we need a Wilhelm scream every once in a while. We might need that sometime, you know? A little bit of, ah!
Man, I wonder if our, license-free software has that on it.
It probably does.
Probably, yeah, actually probably does. And we're almost up to 30 now. We're almost up to 30 destroyed vehicles on this here road. Oh, and the camera is moving around, so they weren't drifting. It was just the camera looking like it was drifting.
That's not the Tokyo Drift, Bliad. You know, the alternative to Tokyo Drift is when the hot dog man comes along and decides he's going to pull a Tokyo Drift. Yes.
Aw, man, I need a desk and a chair and a trip to DC. Puts down super chat quotas like his chat's supposed to be working for him. Like, it's like, you're supposed to create this kind of productivity. It's like, wow, that's really entitled. But anyways, we see them still moving on down the road. We've gotten almost up to 40 at this point. 40 destroyed vehicles on this one road.
And also, funnily enough, we have so many different names in the live chat that Sean Wilhelm showed up and said, do you want me to scream? That would be the Wilhelm scream, I guess. That would qualify. So maybe so. We need to hook him up with a mic.
You know, something like that. We could do that. Maybe. I don't think people
Maybe
like that
so.
much. Man, honestly,
no, man, they would be going crazy. People be telling like, no, stop them voices. Stop it.
Man, honestly, though, man, we could probably use that Elon scream, you know, like, whoa, what a big crowd. Ah! You know, something like that. Like, we could probably use that, maybe.
That scream gives me privacy concerns.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, look at that. Was that somebody standing on top of that piece of wreckage?
I think that was just debris. Yeah, that was just a piece of debris.
Yeah. I'm seeing Mirages, Bliad.
The Russians will be looking up in the sky and seeing that one soon. Oh, holy moly. Dude, this part of the street is just raw carnage. We're almost up to 70 now. We still got about a minute and a half to go here. And I think we're going to reach 70 when we reach the outskirt of town. Well, when we reach the outskirt of town, we're going to hit 70. Man, we ought to take all these losses and give them to that guy. You know what I mean?
Man, I'm telling you.
Oh, man.
This is a lot of losses out here, I'm telling you. How long is this video?
It's not that much longer. It's only about a minute longer, Matthew. Please watch. You'll probably get up close to 100, really.
I'm just glad so far all the equipment losses. We have not seen a little burrow anywhere out here or anything like that. It's just seen a lot of mangled up metal and stuff like that from the Russian and Oreshnik.
Man, soon the Russians will be going down the road and going, quick, carve them up. We can still eat them. They're kind of fresh.
Ugh.
Ugh. But that's what
How
they'll
what
really...
donkey takes flight?
I wonder. Let's type that in. What does donkey...
Tastes like chicken.
Yeah, it'll probably be something like that. What does donkey taste like? Similar to beef, but with a slightly gamey flavor.
Gamey. What the hell qualifies as gamey? I've always heard people say that. I'm like, gamey. I'm like, well, I mean, isn't all meat kind of gamey? I mean, it's, game. Let's see here. I asked ChatGPT. I said, what does donkey taste like? Let's see what the robots think. Let's see. It says, donkey meat is often compared to beef, but has a slightly sweeter and richer flavor. It's leaner than beef, with a firm texture and mild gamey taste, like you mentioned. Some people say it has hints of horse meat, what, or venison. And when cooked properly, especially in slow-cooked dishes like stews, donkey meat can be tender and flavorful. In certain cuisines, particularly in China and Italy, donkey meat is considered a delicacy. In China, it's used in stir-fries and braised dishes, while in Italy, it's salami and ragu. The AI said, would you try it? Hell no. Let's see here. They said, haha, fair enough. Oh, this AI, man, is getting out of hand.
Man, I saw someone say, y'all are from the country. How do y'all not know what it tastes like? We were in the country, but that's a very complicated story. But moving on from that, interesting to know what donkey tastes like now. But we also get to see this BMP get hit.
I'm just saying, if y'all know what horse tastes like, I mean, I don't even know, like, where you'd come up with that.
Well, it's simple, Matthew. You just have to eat a Taco Bell.
Oh, that's a joke. That's a joke.
That's a joke. That's a joke. Don't take that seriously. Don't take it seriously, guys. Oh, come on. And there comes the drone.
Let's see. Which countries eat horse? It says quite a few countries eat horse meat. Let's see. Italy, France, Belgium, Switzerland, Japan, China, Kazakhstan, Mongolia, Mexico, Canada, Argentina. Damn, everybody eats horse meat. I didn't know that. I thought it was not something that usually people ate. Look at Russia. They're eating some horse meat out there, especially in Siberia. It said, especially those Siberians. They love horse meat.
Man, dude. I'm telling you, that's wild. That's actually wild. Moving on from that and down to Chasiv Yar, we also get to see the Rara-Raggy unit hitting some Russian forces down near Chasiv Yar. Check this out. Rara-Raggy. And this is that grim
Also, by the way, it's actually illegal. I think mostly illegal in the U.S. and the U.K. to eat horse meat, actually. So it's not even permissible in the United States.
Are you eating horse meat on a Tuesday? Straight to jail, yeah? It's like, I like that, though. I like that we're not eating horses here in the United States or Britain.
Interesting. Also, by the way, a piece of breaking news while we're watching this footage here of the equipment getting destroyed. It looks like a Bering Air flight carrying 10 people has just disappeared near Alaska around actually Russia, it looks like. It looks like it was heading in the direction of Russia, and it's disappeared with 10 people on board. So that's something happening right now that just happened literally 3 minutes ago. Let's see here. Looking for some more detail here. I'm reposting everything I can find. Let's see here. They're currently looking for it. They're working to get last known coordinates, but it looks like it was heading towards Russia. They've launched search and rescue operations right now as we speak as well. If you want to like jump to this real quick, by the way, we have these being reposted. If you want to take a look at it, this is kind of actually fascinating because it's happening obviously right next to an enemy country right now. So I'm not sure if it's connected, like not trying to make that connection, but it looks like it could maybe have a slight, maybe small chance of being connected, or it could just be an accident.
So this is the aircraft right here. Like Matthew was saying, there were 10 souls on board. It appears that they've gone missing somewhere near to the Bering Strait, heading towards Russia at this point, and it does appear that search and rescue operations are currently underway to try and look for the aircraft and find it, although losing contact with the aircraft most likely means that it has crashed or been taken down somewhere in the area for unknown reasons at this point. So we will be seeing what is going on with that, but that is a fairly interesting thing to hear. Let's see.
Let's see. It looks like it was reported that the Bering Air caravan had gone missing while en route from Unakleet to Nome. So do we have those two locations, by the way, to see exactly where that is?
So Nome, Alaska is right here. So where is Unakleet? That's what we really need to know. So where is...
It's right there. It's right there in the middle of your screen. If you look right in the middle on the coast right there, you'll see it.
Wait a minute. Wasn't SYI Tiger here in Unakleet? He was here in Unakleet. Yeah, so it took off from Unakleet. We actually have a viewer that's been here before or was here for a good while. It took off from Unakleet heading towards Nome. So that's a little bit misleading to say it was heading towards Russia. Because, I mean, technically, yes, but it was well within U.S. airspace and U.S. territory and wasn't really close to Russia at that point yet.
Yeah, I would say so. It was definitely not heading toward Russia. It was heading toward Nome. So big correction on that one. But yeah, it looks like it went missing. Let me try to get the flight path here. We actually have a picture showing the flight path as well. Let's see. It looks like it was literally almost in Nome and about to land before it suddenly went missing. Which is kind of odd because it seems like Nome would have some type of radar to keep track of it. But it looks like all the tracking is based on ADS-B data. So that's kind of fascinating.
Oh, yeah, and this does look like a very primitive airport here, and I'm sure that considering the lack of traffic here, the facilities are probably fairly sparse, not really a lot of them for that matter. Because look at the aircraft that are present here. You know, it's mostly Cessna Caravans, Beechcrafts, and also some slightly larger aircraft as well. Nothing incredibly large, so I'd have a feeling that they probably wouldn't have all of the advanced systems that a larger international airport would have. So with this in mind, it sounds like the aircraft has gone down somewhere nearby, and they're beginning search and rescue operations to see if they can find debris, and then eventually figure out what the cause was for it. Most likely some form of an engine failure or an accident. We did hear in the Philadelphia crash that apparently there was some sort of a misproperly managed oxygen tank that exploded on board the private jet, which led to the crash, and crazily enough, that was actually one of the theories that was floated on the channel that night when the crash occurred here on air. So that was an unfortunate thing to hear, but seems like it was a fairly open and shut kind of a case with that one, as compared to the mid-air collision in Washington, which is still being investigated heavily by the NTSB. And I have a feeling that this one's going to be investigated a good bit by the NTSB as well to figure out what happened to this aircraft and why it went down. Because losing connection with it and seeing that it hasn't arrived anywhere, it is without a doubt at this point gone down somewhere in the area, and it's just that it has not been found yet. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Still, thank you for sharing that breaking news with us, Matthew. And with that, we're going to be moving on back into our Ukraine news right after I get this map moved back over to Ukraine. So moving on from that, we were able to also see the Ukrainians hitting some Russians around Chasiv Yar. Check it out. It's the 18th Brigade, and they're about to hit some Russians. Take a look at this. Boop, right into the building. There goes one of them. And here's the third person view for an instant live replay, and the video is buffering. But oh, they got him. Look at that, right down into the touchdown zone. Absolutely incredible. And we can see a second drone coming on in, making sure to finish him on off, and right into the window. Oh, and another touchdown. An absolutely amazing success for the brigade. Wonderful thing. Check it out. We can see some railroad wagons, some fairly small ones, in front of the building, showing us that this was an industrial area. And we can now see another one going through the front door. Oh, getting another one. Absolutely amazing.
Oh, this drone's finicky. This thing's going in.
And that's
Sparta Brigade.
And that's the end of that clip, but one hell of a thing for sure. And moving on from that and down to Avdiivka, we also got to see a Russian drive through Avdiivka. And it's not looking that good. Of course, the town's never really recovered from the war damage that was caused significantly during the incredibly long battle that was waged over the city of Avdiivka. And of course, with the fog rolling over it, it looks like a abandoned hellhole. It's a horrendous thing, but still showing what the Russians bring to Ukraine is only devastation, really nothing else.
And it really is just devastation. The place looks like it's been like just leveled, basically. It's just like it's returning back to nature, actually. It's got a lot of grass growing up and things like that.
Also,
no, a single stone unturned. No, I think pretty much every stone here has been unturned at this point.
Yeah, I would say it's a horrendous thing, really. We see them looking around. Someone said, even in the war-torn places, the roads look better than they do near me. I was kind of finding that a little weird. There's like no potholes or anything in the street. Like it's a perfectly flat street, which is even unheard of here around where we're at. There's plenty of potholes.
Man, I hit a pothole yesterday. It sounded like a bomb went off in my car. It killed me. Like I was playing some music, and I was like, okay, the music's got to go off now. Turn it all the way down. It's like, okay, this silent drive for the rest of the way home. It's like it's just not going to be good from this point forward.
Man, dude, I've done that a couple of times, man. When you hit a pothole and it's really loud and scary, you like grimace, go, and then you got to turn down the music, just be quiet, and think, okay, hopefully nothing is really screwed up with the tire or the car at this point by hitting that pothole. That's what I do.
You hit an Alabama pothole and you just hear cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. It's like just money signs going around.
Oh man. But let's see. You see them still looking at the wreckage of Avdiivka out the window. And someone said that's a big village. It's like, well, no crap, it's Avdiivka. You know, it's like it's a pretty big one. But of course, mostly everything was reduced to ruin. And I
Someone
saw,
said, "Bro, that looks like it's from like land from World War One or World War Two." It kind of does, honestly. Hopefully, one day we're not saying, "Oh, this looks like land from World War Three." That would really suck.
you know, honestly, man, it kind of looks like Centralia, Pennsylvania.
That was the most random reference I've ever heard. I'm not even sure where that's from.
You don't know? It's the town that has that fire going on under it, underground, and it's supposed to be going on for like 250 years.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that. I just didn't know where it was or what the town was called.
Yeah, it's called Centralia. We could take a look at it here. You know what? Let's take a look at it. It's an interesting thing to look at here. Let me go type it in. Centralia, Pennsylvania. Here it is. Centralia, Pennsylvania. Completely reclaimed by nature. Completely gone, as a matter of fact. Chestnut Street doesn't even exist. And it's right in the middle of a couple of bigger places like Mount Carmel, Shenandoah, and Frackville, which is named after fracking. But if you zoom out, this is where it is in Pennsylvania. It's right north of Harrisburg and southwest of Scranton. But it's a very interesting place because there are still large active coal mines nearby everywhere around here. Look at all this. It's crazy, actually. It's still coal country up there.
Rumor had it the people in that town were very motivated people, very determined people, actually, because rumor had it they had a fire under their ass to really get going with everything they were doing. So that's it. They were motivated.
Man, you know what's crazy is that they say in about 30 years that fire is going to spread underground through that coal vein and into Ashland further south, and they're going to have to evacuate and demolish all of Ashland once it gets there because it's impossible to stop this fire at this point. But
I saw people saying it's actually been put out, according to at least two people in the chat.
under Centralia, it's been put out, but it still is just burning through unburned coal further down the way. I believe like this actually shows an active vent. Yeah, right there. This is a hole that leads down into one of those coal veins, and there's loads of hot gas that's coming out that is escaping from that fire that's still burning. I mean, hell, you can even see the smoke coming out right there, and this was taken in February of last year, and that's the coal smoke coming out of the ground from the active fire. So yes, it is dead under Centralia. Problem is that there's these massive underground fissures that now exist under Centralia at this point because the coal veins are big, like they're huge, and not really a lot of them have been mined under the town. And so as the fire spread through and it burned out all that coal, it's left these massive holes underground. And so at any point, the town can pretty much be swallowed up by these sinkholes that have been created that are hundreds of feet deep under the town, practically everywhere around it. And that's why they evacuated the town, is because it was posing a massive safety concern. And some people almost got killed by falling into sinkholes that just randomly popped up underneath their feet, and they almost fell hundreds of feet to their death underground. So that's why Centralia is, you know, not really a thing anymore. And also, when you see some other smoking vents right here, you can see the smoke still right there from April of 2023. And let's see if we have anything more recent. Oh, look, you can actually see here, closed to all motorized vehicles. And they also state, oh yeah, that's the old highway. They actually buried that in dirt. I watched a documentary on this. That's why I know so much about it. It was like just a few days ago. But that fire is still burning. There's all the smoke from it once again. And that smoke is filled with toxic, like horrendous things. Because coal is a pretty nasty thing to burn. In reality, it has loads of sulfur and other kinds of toxic things in it. And I believe that most of this is actually anthracite coal. So it is really, really toxic. Anthracite coal is 98% carbon. It's the closest thing that coal gets before it becomes a diamond, because a diamond's 100% carbon. And it's a wild thing. What comes out of coal, especially anthracite coal, it's incredibly toxic things like carbon monoxide in incredibly extreme amounts. It is a major health hazard to be around this kind of smoke for a very long amount of time. And it causes a lot of health issues as well. And also there's a lot of lead present in anthracite coal as well. So you really have to deal with all of those toxic things when dealing with the smoke. And that was also another reason why Centralia was evacuated. It was not only only of the massive underground fissures, but also because of the toxic smoke seeping out of the ground everywhere around Centralia at that time. But anyways, we'll move on from that rabbit hole. We don't want to keep y'all, sitting around just listening to this kind of a business. Y'all aren't into anthracite coal, y'all are into war news. And that's what y'all want, and that's what you're gonna get. So let's move on back over into Ukraine and continue on that war news. So moving on down from Avdiivka and towards Velika Novosilka, we got to see some Russians getting hit with the hammers. And I don't mean those rusty hammers. I don't mean the Alabama hammer. I mean the French hammer.
Look at that creature following him.
Man, I think that's a dog.
Man, I think it could have been one.
That is a dog.
Oh yeah, it is a dog. Look at that.
There's another dog. They want food. They're hungry. Poor little things. And now, for the first time ever, I ended a rabbit hole extremely early, and the whole chat's filled with, man, I really like that one, though. And I'm like, dang it, man. It's like, I thought, like whenever I start rabbit holing, most people are like, oh my god. Wait, there was no hammer that hit them.
There was nothing. Here's just a picture of some guys walking across the street with a dog.
Oh my lord, I mislabeled it. So sorry, everyone. It's actually not hammers. I misread it. It was human shields. I forgot to mention that. There's a civilian here that these Russian soldiers are walking behind. That's a civilian, and they're pretty much using them as human shields, so that way they do not get hit by a hammer. So sorry, their correction, everyone. Got that entirely wrong. Got to make a retraction on air. That was a complete misstatement and misunderstanding of the video.
Well, that solves it. That explains why those dogs are around.
Them dogs. It's a very unfortunate thing, the Russians, of course, using tactics like these, and it makes it very difficult for the Ukrainians to attack the Russians without having some form of collateral. But moving on from that and down towards Huilopol, we also got to see some Russian forces getting hit in this area, kind of as vengeance for what they're doing around Velika Novosilka right now. Ferrari guy said, yeah, I think there's a mix-up on the coal. Anthracite is considered the cleanest to burn. Like, as far as the smoke that anthracite produces, it's very little compared to bituminous coal, which is the most common kind in the world. But as far as the kind of toxic things that are in anthracite, it's actually a lot more than normal bituminous coal. And not only that, it burns slower. So it makes it generally less preferred in the modern day. And that's also why the United States doesn't really see an incredibly large amount of anthracite coal being burned here in the United States anymore, beyond the Centralia fire and a couple of other small purposes for it, is because it generally is more toxic, and modern environmental laws want to lean people more towards using bituminous coal than anthracite. But you are correct, it does burn cleaner, at least as far as how much smoke it produces. But moving on from that and down towards Rabotne, we did get to see Russian forces getting slammed down here. Again, a shellacking. Look at that. Oh!
Oh, slamming. Giving them the old-fashioned slammy. Look at that. Wow. They're going to add to that vehicle pile that they can drive down the road and do the ding, 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 the counter again.
Man, look at that. And that's the end of the clip right there. And moving on from that and on into our next clip, we also get to see the Russians getting hit in Zaporizhzhia. And check this out.
They have the katana intro. What the interesting color scheme.
And Kevin R. Henk said, U.S. doesn't have that much anthracite. Actually, I think we have the most anthracite, if I remember, in the world. It's just that anthracite is incredibly rare, and it really only exists within about 5 counties of Pennsylvania, one of those being where Centralia is. So anthracite coal is just, I think it's fairly rare. Let me go see. Anthracite coal. The highest rank of coal. Well, it's also the hardest to burn as well. But let's see here. Let's see, name. Let's see. Oh, wait, hang on. Other producers include Russia, Ukraine, North Korea, South Africa, Vietnam, Australia, Canada, and the U.S. For some reason, I heard that the U.S. was really the only one who had anthracite. That's apparently entirely wrong. But interesting. Let me see. Who has the most anthracite coal? Who has the most anthracite coal? The United States. So I was correct in saying that we had the most anthracite coal, but there are other countries that do have more, well, not more, but some anthracite coal. So that's interesting. And we can see the drone coming on down and hitting that target right there. Very nice to see.
We got a little static in between them, so we didn't get to see the exact thing.
Yeah, unfortunately, sadly. And we can also see James Hughes saying anthracite coal, great for making steel. I believe, if I remember correctly, that's the one that is preferred for creating coke, and then they use that to make steel. So that is actually pretty neat.
Aw, man. You gotta have that coke to make that steel.
Aw, man.
No, you don't snort it, you add it to the recipe.
Oh man, this isn't really that white kind of coke I'm used to. It's like a rock. What the hell? You know, something like that. It's like
slowly transform like a steel worker uniform. Like, oh, they said coke.
I might have to get in on that one. But moving on from that and on up into Kyiv, it's now time for the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy here on day 1079 of the war. And so, without further ado, here is the speech. Speech!
Шановні українці, українки, сьогодні вже півроку Курської операції. Наші активні дії на території Росії, ми повернули війну додому в Росію, і саме там повинні відчувати, що таке війна. І відчувають. Сьогодні я нагородив учасників Курської операції, 2 хлопців, Герої України, також вручив хрести бойових заслуг, ордени України. Я хочу подякувати кожному українському воїну, всім нашим підрозділам, які задіяні на Курщині і які показали всьому світові, що ми можемо навіть в умовах обмежених ресурсів діяти активно, неочікувано і результативно. Російський блеф виявляємо як блеф. Захищаємо наші міста, Суми і Харків. Значно поповнили обмінний фонд, і це сотні і сотні російських військових, яких ми обмінюємо, щоб повертати українців з полону. Є у нас в полоні і солдати Північної Кореї. Зараз вони проходять лікування, були поранені вони в боях, важкі поранення, але вони є доказом того, що Путін втягнув ще одну державу в цю війну. Північну Корею, і навчає цю державу вести сучасну війну. Це загроза для всіх, для кожної країни у Східній Азії. Я вдячний усім партнерам, хто розуміє, як важливо зупинити Росію зараз. Зараз, щоб не довелось ще через роки воювати. Ще раз відзначу бригади Збройних сил України, які задіяні на Курщині. Воїни 80-ї, 82-ї, 95-ї, 22-ї, 61-ї бригад, 36-ї бригади морпіхів, 17-та окрема танкова, 47-та окрема механізована, 129-та окрема бригада ТРО, воїни сил спеціальних операцій, воїни Служби безпеки України, увесь задіяний склад сил МВС України. Я хочу також подякувати главкому генералу Сирському за планування Курської операції і в дипломатії, яка буде, і в історії, яку писатимуть українці, саме наші люди, а не окупанти, буде відображена значущість Курської операції. І також я хочу сьогодні подякувати Франції, особисто президенту Макрону, за виконання наших домовленостей, наші повітряні сили доповнені тепер міражами, французькими літаками, і це ще один етап розвитку української військової авіації. Зможемо виконувати більше завдань. Також дякую Нідерландам, є нова поставка F-16, і це вагомо. Ще одне. Зустрівся з президенткою ЄБРР, вона зараз з візитом в Україні. Я вдячний за підтримку України програми Європейського банку реконструкції та розвитку, спрямовані на багато важливих напрямків. І сьогодні ми говорили з ЄБРР, зокрема про те, що треба підтримувати українських переселенців, внутрішніх наших переселенців, всіх, хто був змушений їхати з дому через війну, хто втратив дім, і треба допомогти цим людям на новому місці отримати нормальні квартири чи будинки. І саме це питання є найбільш важливим для мільйонів українських переселенців. Свій дім. І у наших партнерів точно є ресурс, щоб допомогти із цим. І також сьогодні поставив відповідні задачі міністру фінансів Марченку та віце-прем'єр-міністру з відновлення Кулебі. Протягом 2 тижнів має бути чітка програма підтримки внутрішніх переселенців, ефективна і зрозуміла людям. Я дякую всім, хто з Україною. Слава Україні!
And Heroam
And
Slava.
Hiram Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelenskyy. And that is going to be moving us on into the second segment of the stream where we get to talk to all of y'all. And before we move on into that, I see loads of people talking about coal. For some reason, coal is the thing that triggered the whole chat into talking, like about it, like endlessly, like ever since I brought it up. So I did look into it, and I was wrong. Anthracite coal is cleaner to burn, but it is slower to burn as well. And because also it burns a lot hotter than bituminous coal. But one thing that I do know about anthracite coal, because many of y'all know that I'm just one of those people, one of those people maybe with some kind of a mental thing that forces me to be interested in trains. And so I will tell you one thing I do know about anthracite coal is that steam locomotives, Matthew, back in the day when they used coal, had to be specifically designed for the coal they'd use. Most coal in the United States was bituminous coal throughout most areas of the country. So most trains were designed to use that. But there was a special kind of a design of locomotive that was used heavily at the beginning of the 1900s to use bituminous coal. It required a massive firebox to produce the same kind of heat because, of course, it burns slower. So they needed a massive firebox. So what they did is that they designed this thing that you probably have never seen before, the Camelback.
Yeah, I've never seen that before, that's for sure.
These things are ugly. Like, I just think they're horrendous looking. But basically what it is that this whole thing back there, like this giant protrusion part back here, that is the firebox. It's huge. I mean, this thing is massive. So the fireman would sit back here at the tender and he would shovel the coal in. I think on some of the larger versions, they had an auger for it that would just like auger the coal into the boiler. And then a spray of steam would disperse the coal evenly in the boiler. But the actual engineer was up here in this cab. The backwards visibility was non-existent. These things were terrible, and people didn't really like them that much. But they used them a lot because anthracite coal was cheap in this area. This is actually the Central Railroad of New Jersey, so this was very close to the anthracite country of the United States, which is in Pennsylvania. And so it was the cheapest coal available, so they'd configure their trains to use anthracite coal, and these were the kinds of designs that came out of that. It's a horrendous design. Also, that is the Wooten firebox. That is correct. That's the design that was made to burn anthracite coal. Terrible looking thing. I hate them so much. I really like the ones that they made because I believe the Reading, because I was looking at this one, the T1 class was also made to burn anthracite coal because this is the Reading Railroad of Pennsylvania, and of course obviously that's the closest coal source to them. And I think their firebox was widened. You can kind of see like the flare at the bottom to use anthracite, but this looks more conventional. Still not my favorite, but it still looks more conventional than whatever the hell a Camelback is. Wait a minute, Mandy, we missed it. Someone brought it up. Oh my lord. Hang on, hold up. I gotta go get it again. Whoa. Look at that boiler.
Oh my God, you returned to it just for that? I thought you
Yeah.
got to point out something on the train. Oh my, man, look at that boiler.
Whoa. Look at that boiler. Whoa. Look at that toiler.
Whoa.
I mean,
I don't see a spoiler.
we might have a new Casey Jones here, but whoa. Look at that. Look at that spoiler. But anyways,
You
moving
stole
on.
that one, dang it.
Man, I'm telling you, man. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well, based off of my knowledge at least. And let's see. Someone said you should visit the train museum in Sacramento. David Tablet actually said that. I want to visit train museums. It's just that Matthew hates trains. It's like nails on a chalkboard for him. Kind of like how cars are for me, like trains are for him. So I would go, but Matthew and me generally go everywhere together these days. Like, you know, traveling around and stuff. So I probably wouldn't be able to do that without having him want to just run away and never return. And then we have a show to run, so I can't have him just run off and never return because he's about half of the whole show that's on air. So
Man, call me an orphan. I'll be running away when I see these trains. I'll be saying, I'm quitting the job. I'm quitting everything. I'm running. I'm not putting up with this train business.
Man,
I'm not doing it.
Man, if I show him more trains, he might be the kind of person to grab a wad of letters, fling them down at our door, and go storming off and screaming. You know, it could be something like that.
Yeah, I could do that. I could
Could
be
do that.
an ass.
could do that. Just absolutely have no respect, but then act like you are owed respect just because you're an asshole. Could be something like that. But anyways, we're speaking of nothing personal at all with that, by the way, just letting y'all know. It's just completely detached from everything. But moving on from that, it is time for us to get into those juicy questions, because we have a load of them. So what do we got, Matthew?
So our questions tonight are juicier than a ribeye steak. They're juicier than the finest A1 Wagyu. Some call them questions. I call them super chats. Moving on to our first one here. This one goes to Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a $31 donation. And thank you very much, Margaret, for supporting the channel and helping to keep us running. And it goes without saying, Margaret has been on the channel for ages. She might have actually been here before I was even here. Very much an old guard. And thank you very much, Margaret, for that support. And he said, in small gratitude for your hard work and dedication, and Google John Simpson Kirkpatrick and scroll down to military service, second paragraph, and he used donkeys to stretcher injured from the front lines and bring back supplies.
And let's see here. John Simpson Kirkpatrick. Oh, this was Gallipoli. Yeah, I do know about this, actually. And let me see here. Here's one of the paintings made. And it's a painting, so it'll pass. But this is a painting of John Simpson Kirkpatrick using the donkeys to evacuate wounded out of Gallipoli. He was a part of the Anzac forces of the Australians and New Zealanders who went on the failed offensive to the Gallipoli area, which is actually in the Dardanelles, I believe. Or actually... yeah, it is the Dardanelles. I did get that right. So they landed somewhere down around here. You can actually see all of the memorials to the Anzacs and the Turkish troops, or the Ottoman troops, that were fighting in this area. It was a horrendous battlefield. We're talking about some of the worst battlefields that could be seen were on this tiny little peninsula down here. The Australians and the New Zealanders never succeeded in breaking through and actually pushing up and creating a new front towards Constantinople at the time, and so they eventually withdrew. But this was one of the stories of bravery and valor of one of the soldiers of the Anzacs that were evacuating the wounded. And I do remember the story, actually. It was a bit of a short one that I heard a long time ago, probably way back about 10 years ago at this point, but I do remember it, and it is one hell of a story about this guy. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and also bringing up this person, because Margaret Hemsley, you are actually from Australia. So for all of you folks down there, this guy is a hero of World War I, much like Sergeant York is for the United States of America. And I gotta say that guy certainly was a hero, getting all of those wounded folks out of the trenches and fields of Gallipoli further on up north and getting them down to the ships to be evacuated. And those little donkeys were heroes as well, unsung hero of the whole deal. But still, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, I gotta say, a huge tribute and a massive thanks to all of those Anzac forces that did fight in the First World War that are completely unsung heroes for most of the Western world. A lot of people don't really know that Australia and New Zealand were actively involved in World War I through a large part. They were part of the British Empire at the time for the large majority, and while they were largely Commonwealths or Dominions, they still answered the call to join the war when it began, being a part of the British Empire, and actively engaged and fought practically everywhere the World War was occurring. In the trenches of Western Europe, in the beaches and hills of Gallipoli, they were there. It was really a crazy thing to think that they really don't get mentioned much. Kind of like how soldiers of the British Raj, which is now modern-day India, really aren't mentioned a lot either, and a whole bunch of other forces that were pulled in from everywhere around the world that were a part of World War I, truly making it the world's war, and the first one of its kind at that kind of an industrial scale, and with that many people involved and that many losses being sustained. But still, thank you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are also, Monster Lab said, also Canada, unsung heroes of World War I. That's true. Also, in a kind of a funny, not so funny light, they were also the war criminals of World War I. I mean, they made everyone terrified, even Americans. Well, even Americans, that makes it sound like Americans are war criminals. Everyone who ever watched the Canadians in battle were like, oh my god, like, the Canadians are the reason why modern Geneva Conventions exist the way they do, because they do things that no one else did. Like, that's one thing that's scary about Canadians, is that everyone says they're really peaceful and nice. The reality is that if you get them in war, they're probably the most savage army that you'll fight against, at least by World War I and World War II's historical examples. Canadians are scary. Like, I'd say they're even more scarier than Americans fighting you. Because, like, you know, they don't have the budget that the U.S. military has, but they've got the spirit. Like, they've got more than the spirit, honestly. Because, man, I mean, But it was so just to explain to y'all what would happen, Canadians generally wouldn't take prisoners. That was just kind of the running standard in World War I, is that prisoners were just not accepted. So if the Germans surrendered, the officer would just pull out his service pistol, he'd just go down the line taking them out, so that way they didn't have to process them into prisoner of war camps and send them back to Canada or some sort of a holding facility in Britain or France. That shocked a lot of people because the Canadians would go about it almost in an industrial way. If a large group of Germans surrendered, they just take them out. So it was kind of a wild thing with the Canadians during that war, but also Canada did incredibly well. I mean, not only were they incredibly ferocious in that kind of a sense, but they also were able to gain some massive battlefield victories that other nations just could not see. And so pretty impressive in both ways, for good and for bad. But anyways, also Richard said, we got the balls. Man, I don't know. It's like, I don't know. Because at the end of the war, everyone went, you know what? We need to ban poison gas. And also, we need to make everything that Canada did in World War I, where they can't do it again. So they were kind of nerfed going on in the World War II a good bit. But anyways, I also, by the way, I do have to clear this up. That's not to say that Canada was not the only one to do that. In the U.S., American Expeditionary Forces in World War I, it was not an incredibly common thing for us to not process prisoners. There actually was a lot of prisoners that we would process and send back to the States. But every once in a while, when the battle was really at its height and there really was no way to get prisoners back behind the lines, the U.S. would take them out. We called it dropsy disease. That was just kind of the thing that was claimed, is that they had dropsy disease and they just, went the way of the dodo. That was largely what we would say. Still, war crime, but we didn't do it. No one did it as much as the Canadians. The Canadians were really just no joke when it came to that sort of a deal. If you were a German and you surrendered and the unit you surrendered to was Canadian, you may as well have already just kissed it goodbye at that point. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But a big thanks to you once again, Margaret Hemsley, for helping this channel to keep on running.
Yes, indeed. And our next one goes to Barry Woodward, who's also a longtime channel legend, and he puts in a $27 donation. And thank you very much, Barry, for helping to keep the channel running and trucking along as well. And he said, in order to sleep soundly, I see Z in a F-16 cockpit flying over Moscow in a green leather cockpit seat, seeking Putin targets.
I want to find the real Putin, the long-lasting Putin, because while he might be Putin around, I'm looking for a real piss, a long-lasting piss. But nevertheless,
Man, we call him Volodymyr Baron. He flies over the place and he's terrorizing Moscow. Oh man, a real long-lasting terrorization.
Vladimir Putin, more like Vladimir Bichin. But nevertheless, I gotta thank you greatly for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. If it was not for people like you, we would not be able to make this channel possible, and we would not be able to keep it running. And so a massive thank you once again for the support. And with that, I would like to say that you might be right. That might happen one day. But I gotta stop doing that. It's starting to hurt my throat now. I've done that a lot tonight. But Matthew, I thought you were going to say something there.
Oh, no, I think you're hearing stuff, man. Like, I'm totally silent over here.
I'm hearing things? Am I going crazy? Is that the word? But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one. But massive thanks to you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running.
I just don't understand how you can be going crazy. Has anybody ever thought about that? Like, you can become crazy, but how can you go crazy? Like, you're just gonna go crazy. I just don't understand that. But anyways,
I mean, in our personal experience, Matthew, we've never known anyone that's gone crazy. They've just been crazy,
or you just consume crazy,
or they're just a force of devilment and torture. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next ones here go to Gunfox, the channel legend as well. He puts in 3 super chats for a total of a $60 support. And huge shout out to Gunfox for the massive support once again. And Gunfox is coming in clutch, and he's trying to buy some LSA stock, it looks like. But he has a days in history for us right now in his super chats. And his first one said Gemini 10, officially Gemini X. That's 10. It was the 8th crewed Gemini flight and the 16th crewed American flight. Gemini 10 was designed to achieve rendezvous and docking with the Agena Target Vehicle, ATV, and the EVA. Also, the Gemini XI, 11 for Matt. Thank you. September 12 to 15, 1966, the direct ascent rendezvous and docking with the Agena vehicle was achieved approximately 94 minutes after liftoff, and depending on the onboard computer and radar equipment, also the Gemini XII 12 for Matt. Thank you. They said the final Gemini mission, commanded by the Gemini VII. You did not provide me one for that. I'm sorry, Gunfox.
That
He
would be
said
7.
the Gemini 7 veteran James A. Lavelle. The flight featured 3 periods of EVA by rookie Edwin Buzz Aldrin, who really messed somebody up who was apparently not believing in space travel. They said lasting a total of 5 hours and 30 minutes. And Apollo missions next.
I'm not going to lie, dude, right here in this picture, this honestly looks like that high altitude jump that guy made from the balloon.
It looks like, kind of like the picture that Elon Musk sent back about that Tesla Roadster floating around in space, and they had that spaceman sitting in it.
Kind of, yeah. It kind of did look like that. Yeah. And look at that. It's Buzz Aldrin. Man, Buzz Aldrin beats your ass if you say that you think the moon landing's fake. I mean, he will just absolutely throw hands. Like that's someone you do not want to be around when you go, man, I don't really think the moon landing's real. Next thing you just hear is bam, whop. It's like, whoa. It's like he's beating the hell out of someone. It's like, oh my God. Dude,
Buzz Aldrin's not playing, man. He grew up in the trenches. He's not playing. It's like, you question that space travel, man. It's going down.
Man, you see this guy right here? He will throw hands better than Mike Tyson the moment you say that the moon landing might not happen. Like, he will beat you alive. He's the reason why I have enough respect to say I believe the moon landings are real, because I'm scared of him more so than I am of being wrong. But beyond that, I'm just kidding. By the way, the moon landings were real. But man, he would buzz a little bit off the top with that left hook. I'm telling you that. That's what they call him, Buzz Aldrin. You know what I mean? Like, it's
they call him Buzz because their heads are ringing after they get that left hook.
Man, he's a big stepper. Like, there's something like that. He's like, man, but nevertheless, oh man, there's the launch of Gemini 12, which would take Buzz Aldrin up to space. He got his hands fighting aliens on the moon. Just to let you all know. But beyond that, we can see that
he said, "Look, Sonny, they didn't pick me for nothing. they sent me to space. They had no choice."
Dude, they sat there and said, "Hey, we think there might be aliens on the moon." They're like, well, shit, just send Buzz on the first one to the moon. He'll beat the hell out of him. It's like, it's like, send him, you know, it's like, and they said, that's also why he was the second guy to get out of the lander, you know, behind Neil Armstrong, is because if there were aliens out there, they were going to grab Neil and he was going to jump out and give him the upper deck suplex to really get him off of Neil. That's why he was the second one out.
Neil.
Huh?
Hey, we're talking about Neil deGrasse Tyson. Neil deGrasse Tyson's going to out-arrogant the aliens if you ever came across them.
Dude, he's going to sit there and say, actually, carbon-based life forms on the moon is just not possible, you know, and do something like that. Like, but still, man, we're talking about Neil Armstrong. We're talking about the guy who had the name that make you think that he'd be throwing hands because his last name's Armstrong, but he isn't the guy who's got the strong arms. It's actually Buzz Aldrin out here giving out lefts and rights like nobody's business. But you know one thing, man? You know, one thing, he wasn't giving out lefts because he was no damn commie. I'll tell you that. But
man, he was right.
Oh man, but there's Neil Armstrong right there. That's the Neil we're talking about. He wasn't on the Gemini 12 mission. It was just Buzz Aldrin and the other fella whose name I have forgotten at this point, unfortunately. It was Lovell. It was Lovell. Cool. But nevertheless, a very interesting mission, and I hope you all enjoyed the space jokes that we made, and I hope that there was a good deal of fun. And also, let's see here. I'm seeing a lot of people. Adam Glazer, Buzz already knows them. He was looking for Transformers on the moon. Oh man, I hate it when historical things like, you know, they put them in movies like that. I just feel like it kind of cheapens them out a bit. That's why I think people probably don't believe these days that the moon landing was real, or at least some people don't, is because of stuff like that. And they're like, oh, wow, look at that CGI. What if it was fake? You know, it's like, it just really cheapens the whole accomplishment that we made. You know, it's kind of like every time a movie happens in Washington, D.C., they have to blow up the White House and burn down the Capitol. I'm like, why? It's like, why do we have to do that? I like those buildings. They're nice, and they're a big part of American history. Why do we have to do that?
Are you talking about like all those movies like White House Down and stuff like that, and all these like action movies based around the White House?
Yeah, it's like, let's have a C-17 run right through the middle of the White House and destroy it. It's like, why do we want to destroy our national landmarks in movies?
Yeah, I don't understand that either, man. I don't understand also, why does it always have to be a disaster happen in the United States? Like someone's being put in charge as like the last man standing or something, and they're in the White House. It's like, how come it's always like that? How come it's not like, you know, something different?
And and every single movie like that, man, it's like, we've won, but at what cost? Like they're almost like making an argument for like the evil people winning. It's like, No, it's like, no, it's like, honestly, with movies like that, I think that America should always come out handily on top. At that point, I feel like it ought to be like a North Korean propaganda movie. It's like, oh, they almost tried, but we beat them to death. It's like, we won. It's like, that's what I think it should be like, because that makes more sense to me, because that's realistically how it usually turns out. And then that Civil War movie, man. Ugh. Oh, dude, the battle scenes were terrible. Like, I'm not even going to talk about the movie itself. I just thought the battle scenes were horrendous. Dude, they had an Apache firing into a building literally almost at, like, ground level. It's like hovering 30 feet above the ground in the middle of a busy city street in Washington, D.C., firing its chain gun at something like 50 feet in front of it, and then they dubbed over the sound of a minigun instead of the chain gun. Because you know how Apache guns sound, right, man? They go, boom, 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 like that?
Yeah.
They literally had playing over it. I was like, what the hell? I was like, that's not even the noise it makes. It's like, that shows you how little research they did in the editing department, because they couldn't even figure out what the noise of an Apache's gun was like. So I honestly find it scarier to hear that loud thumping noise than a minigun. It's like, it was goofy. I honestly found that whole movie goofy. And then it was also like, it was just goofy the whole way around. Like, it was just goofy. It was the goofiest thing ever. I can't even explain it. But I just didn't like it at all. I saw some bits of it, and I was like, eh. And it also made it seem like it was like, honestly, like journalist glazing. And I'm like, we're journalists, so like in a sense, we do our own version of it. But I don't really like that, because it's like, shouldn't we talk about in a civil war like the horrendous things that these soldiers and civilians that are going through in a hypothetical war like this, instead of acting like, oh, blessed be the journalist, the bringer of truth? It's like, that's kind of a little goofy. It's like, honestly, it's like we're like at the bottom rung of importance in a war. It's like everyone else is far more important than the kind of role that we play in any of that, because we're just telling y'all what's going on. There are people out there in a kind of situation like that are fighting and dying or just getting killed randomly in a civil war. It's like, shouldn't we be focusing on that more so than like, oh, look at these journalists, they tried to get gas and they got asked, what American are you? It's like, oh, wow, really brave. It's like, what about all those soldiers like 10 miles away that are getting blasted by each other? So how about their story? That's honestly how I felt about it. But anyways, I hope that gives you all my 2 cents on that movie. I just wasn't a fan. But beyond that, thank you once again for support Gunfox and sharing multiple days in history and a lot of information about the Gemini missions. Once again, we love to hear about the Gemini missions, because it is quite truly the bee's knees, the buzz of the space news, left hooks and all. But nevertheless, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
Also, Barry Woodward was telling me to Google F Troop, which is apparently, it looks like a show or a movie or something like that. I was looking at it here to see what it was all about. I don't really know, honestly, what the hell this is. It's like a satirical American television Western sitcom about U.S. soldiers and American Indians in the Wild West during the 1860s. A very interesting show concept, I must say, Barry Woodward. I've never heard of it before. I'll have to check it out some more. But also, by the way, we need to grab a live chat question for Gunfox before we forget. And in honor of Gunfox's $60 support, which we're very appreciative of, this live chat question goes to Darren Quinn, who says each of the IRBM missiles that Russia has costs how much?
They cost a good bit. I believe it's in the tens of millions. So they're fairly expensive. Really, any kind of rocketry of that kind of a size costs a lot of money. A load of money, as a matter of fact. So generally, I would say somewhere in the tens of millions, although I'm not really sure if we know the exact cost. But let's pull up the Sarmat missile cost, and let's see if we can get an approximate ballpark. So the Sarmat, actually, there's no information about the cost of a Sarmat missile. So I would assume tens of millions of dollars, most likely. But with that, I hope that does address that well, and thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to none other than Flash1, longtime channel legend as well, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Flash, for that support. And they said, hello, Enforcers, and hello, Flash. They said, and hello to the LSA. And does the American military have a boom/missile that could take out the Crimean Bridge in one hit? Non-nuclear, of course. And do you think the U.S. would give it to Ukraine if they did?
I believe a Tomahawk could do the job if it was aimed correctly. This is the Tomahawk. It's a pretty nice little missile. Everyone knows about it. It's famous because of the Gulf War. But I believe the payload on these things is pretty big. It can carry a nuclear warhead, by the way, so these things are nuclear capable. But as far as the conventional warhead, it has a 1,000-pound high-explosive conventional warhead, or it can carry any kind of combined effects bomb, or really a cluster bomb at that point. So this thing would have enough firepower. 1,000 pounds of explosives would be enough to lift the bridge off of its spans and throw a part of it into the sea. So I would assume that a Tomahawk could probably do the job. A Moab could obviously do the job. But talking about conventional kinds of cruise missiles and such things, the Tomahawk would probably be the best bet for the job. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Very good question, by the way. Very interesting one. And these things only cost a nice, smooth $4 million. So it's like chucking a whole main battle tank at a target every time we fire one of these things. That's actually wild when you think about it. It's like, okay, let's just take the whole Abrams and just fling it right at the target.
Honestly, really, like one thing I will say is I don't agree with Elon Musk on a lot anymore, to be perfectly honest. But one thing I did see him say on Twitter today that I would agree with, not that Elon said it, but just overall as a concept, the U.S. military needs to get out of this mindset of buying a really, really expensive, like single shot equipment, and they need to start getting into the mindset of having disposable large quantities of, for example, attack drones and things like that that we're seeing being deployed around the world right now. And I think generally we're behind the curve on that because the Pentagon likes to buy really expensive, like large systems instead of like really more inexpensive, like larger quantities of weaponry. And that is something they'll probably have to get a grip on in the coming years, probably really quickly actually, because it's actually crunch time right now. It's actually time to actually have that sorted out.
I would say that's probably a good point, but on the contrary, I would say that the precise weapons that are fairly expensive have proven to be effective more than once. Because back in the day, we did have a general deal of inexpensive equipment that was easily disposable. The problem was that we couldn't hit pinpoint targets with it, and I know the technology has advanced a lot, and we can do that now. But to lob a 1,000-pound weapon in anything is going to be incredibly expensive, especially with the range that these Tomahawks have on them. I believe that these things, let me make sure, the operational range is about 1,350 nautical miles. So this thing is an intermediate range cruise missile at this point. It's able to reach as far as a Rubesh or an Oreshnik can, and it can carry 1,000 pounds of ordnance with it as well. So, I mean, this thing isn't exactly, like the short range kind of a missile that costs $4 million. It's like we fire a main battle tank at the thing, but this main battle tank can travel across half the United States in maybe about 2 hours and then hit its target with pinpoint accuracy after a 2-hour flight.
Yeah, maybe so, maybe. But honestly, like, I wonder if part of it is just because the Pentagon likes to buy really, really expensive stuff. Like you're saying, though, it has a specific use case to it, but we shouldn't be completely reliant on just this. Because you said it became famous, I think, in the Gulf War or something like that. And it sounds like we were using it quite a damn bit.
We were using it a lot, but it actually turned out to be wildly effective as well in the not in the Cold War, but in the Gulf War. It was incredibly good. Like, it was insanely good. That's really why the U.S. started to really heavily lean, especially for naval missile operations, into the Tomahawk, because it's just that good. It's an amazing missile. It probably would stand up pretty well even today. And while you can shoot it down, which isn't out of the question, it will still be able to pose some very considerable damage once it hits its target. Also, another thing that I do have to explain, because a lot of people don't know this, and there's something that it really is important to talk about in an industrial world like we live in. Military equipment sounds expensive, and I saw someone say it, kickbacks kill the defense budget. The Tomahawk probably doesn't have a lot of kickback built into it at $4 million, because there are only thousands of them that are made, or tens of thousands of them. And that isn't really a lot, and I'll explain why. Many people know that cars are a fairly advanced thing in the modern world. The thing is, though, and let me go just pull up a Hyundai factory. That'll be a good example. So, for example, here's a Hyundai factory. This one's actually in Alabama. This one actually is down near Hope Hull, just south of Alabama. South of Montgomery. Whoopsies. But beyond that, this is a Hyundai factory. And what is interesting about producing anything industrially is that the machining machines that actually produce the things that make these pieces or vehicles or something along those lines are incredibly expensive. That's actually something that was found out originally by Henry Ford when he was trying to create the Ford Motor Company in the modern day and pump out Model Ts and Model As until the cows came home to make them incredibly cheap because they were producing them in mass. If you produce a small number of equipment, which usually military productions are in smaller order numbers compared to, say, a car, it is incredibly expensive because most of the money is actually put into the machining components, not the actual vehicles. And those machining components will only be used a little bit of the time. At least, a little bit of the time that the production run is going. So, for example, with Hyundai, There are 360 million people in the United States, and most of those people, probably about 200 million of those people who are old enough to drive a car, are going to drive a car and are going to own one. So there is a massive market to produce cars. This means that the insane cost of creating new machining is really it's not really that bad because you can make back all of your losses on producing that machining by producing tens of millions of cars. And so that's why cars are incredibly cheap as a machine component. Where that does not exist is in the railroading world or the military world. Locomotives like these are made in limited numbers, usually around 1,000 of them or less each time, and this makes them wildly expensive because they have to produce specific machining components and industrial machinery to produce each of these locomotives, and that makes the cost, because they're not producing a lot of them, incredibly expensive because they have to pay off the cost of the machining components and the industrial machinery to produce these things. So this locomotive here, which if you produce these things in the millions, they would end up being fairly cheap. But with this thing here only being produced about 1,000 or so, and they have to create new tooling for them each time, they cost tens of millions of dollars for a single locomotive. It's kind of the same thing with military equipment. Tanks, like the Abrams, are not made in large numbers. There's only several thousand of them that exist in the United States, and a decent amount more around the world. And that means that the cost of creating that machining and tooling is incredibly expensive because they're not able to recoup the cost on a long production run that produces a lot of equipment. And so for this reason, the prices become incredibly high, especially when the United States continuously is investing in brand new equipment that requires brand new tooling and machining or completely separate tooling and machining from everything else. And that makes the costs of everything go up tremendously. It's a downside to the military having some of the most robust weapon systems in the world, but that's really where a lot of the cost at the end of the day comes from with systems like these.
Interesting. That's very interesting. I don't know how you tied that into trains, but I like the tie-in.
Man, well, I had to, like it's just something. It really, it's something that you can see in any category where things are produced in limited numbers. I mean, hell, starships, for example, are really expensive to produce. Well, they don't have the Tesla Starship on Wikipedia, but they're incredibly expensive to produce, but they're reusable. So they're able to recoup the cost of machining because, once again, they'll be able to get multiple uses out of each Starship. Really can't do that, though, with the normal kind of rockets like the Saturn V, which made them incredibly expensive because they were produced, once again, in limited numbers. The machining and tooling was really expensive, and not only that, they weren't going to make a lot of them. So they ended up becoming wildly expensive for that reason, and also because of the fuel.
Oh, and also to get back to Flash One's original question, do you think that the U.S. would give it to Ukraine, the Tomahawk?
I don't know. It actually is an old system from the 80s. At least that was its first introduction. So I think some of the older Tomahawks are entirely possible to give. It's just that I think that the prior administration was scared about the power of the Tomahawk because it can reach 1,500 miles, at least its longest range version. So it'd actually be able to fire all the way at Omsk and actually hit a target around the city of Omsk, all the way inside the Asian area of the Russian Federation. So I think that's why we haven't gave it to him so far. But if it continues to escalate, we may see that the current administration decides that it would be prudent to provide Ukraine with Tomahawks. So we might actually see that someday. We never really know. But with that, I hope that does address that fairly well. And also, Walter Lakota, you are correct. Usually it is the engine, and that's something that I didn't explain, but you are correct. It usually is the engine that is incredibly costly because they have to be made custom ordered. The bodies aren't that hard to produce. That's just generally, fabricating the metal sheets, and especially for freight locomotives, that's insanely easy. For car bodies, that can be a little bit more expensive. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here goes to TJ Sharkey, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Mr. Sharkey, for that support and helping to keep us running as well. And they said, can someone make a card game based on Russia and the other opponents to irritate them a little? Putin can be called Madman Vlad, LOL.
Well, honestly, there's a game like that I used to play, kind of, sort of, that was called Nuked, and it was a card game that I used to play back in high school. And let me see if I can show it to y'all. Here it is. This is the game. It was a really fun game. I remember that it became a favorite, and a load of people always wanted me to bring this little stack of cards to come play the game Nuked at school. It was a really fun one. But this is the closest thing I could think of when thinking of a game like that is the game Nuked. It was pretty cool. I still think it actually was really fun, and I'd highly recommend it if you have a group of folks that you like to play some games with. This is a really fun little card game. Because at any given moment, you can just screw someone over and drop a nuke on them. It wipes everything out that they built up. So with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Neil Vizanon, who puts in a 20. And of course, Neil's a longtime channel legend, and thank you very much, Neil, for the support yet again. And he said, I just saw a video that said that the U.S. could reliably shoot down 225 ICBMs. And given the Russian failure today, what do you think the numbers would be in an ICBM exchange?
That is actually very interesting. I have not heard that before. I've heard that the interception rates, especially on their I guess you could say their terminal phase, which is where they're about to hit their target, actually would be fairly low. So if we're intercepting them somewhere else, that could probably be the reason why, but I would have to look into that a little bit more. But if we were to take that number as true, there probably would only be about 70 or so Russian strategic nuclear weapons that would end up impacting the United States, which is still a very large amount, mind you. That would be enough to largely destroy the nation's economy and also most of its population centers, but it still wouldn't be enough to completely destroy the United States entirely and knock it out. The Russian Federation, on the other hand, probably would not be able to intercept or shoot down really any ICBMs, so their casualty rates would be insanely high. Nearly 70% of the Russian Federation would be dead within the year. The United States, though, going off that, we probably would see something far less. It would be apocalyptic, of course. 30% of the population would probably die at that point by the end of the year, but it wouldn't be as bad as, say, 60%, which is what the usual forecast is if all nuclear weapons that Russia fired hit the United States. And so with that, I hope that does address it well. Very interesting question, by the way. And thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running and keeping it rolling, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be here right now and keeping this thing running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to another channel legend. It's Marion Deemert, who puts in a 20 as well. And thank you very much, Marion, for helping to keep the channel running. Also, and Marion said, coffee or pizza, you get your choice. And Slava Ukraine, and Hiram Slava.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support for the coffee and the pizza. And hopefully we will be able to have both, actually. I'd like to have both. I think I'm running out of stoke again, Matthew, so hopefully we'll be able to, get some stoke sometime soon. But beyond that, all of that's if we have a car to drive. But anyways, with that, I got to thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it was not for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And so a massive thanks to y'all once again for helping this thing to be possible. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Thomas Martin, who puts in the 20. And thank you very much, Mr. Thomas Martin, for that support. He said that top 5 Central European high-speed trains, IYP.
Top 5 high-speed trains? Is that what they asked?
European high-speed trains.
Ah, yes. I see you know your high speed well. Good one. I think that there's several, but I'll just keep it short. I won't show pictures, but I'll say what my top 5 are. Number 1 are the Germans with the ICE. I think that's just a cool one. I think the livery is cool, and I think they look really futuristic. Second would be the TGV in France, a really cool one. Third would be the Southeastern high speed, or the HS1 and HS2 in the UK. I think that one's a really neat one as well, and I like the design of it. The fourth one would be the Eurostar. That's all right. Like, I don't really think the design is striking, like as striking as, say, the ICE or the TGV, or even hell, the HS1 and the HS2s, but it is still pretty neat. And then the fifth one on the list would be the Italian high-speed trains, which are also pretty cool as well. I don't think y'all have ever seen an Italian high-speed train, have y'all? I will show y'all a picture of that one. High-speed train. Here we go. It's the Alta Velocita. And so let me go see if I can show this to y'all here. Yes. I see you know your Juno well. And here we go. This is it.
Interesting. That's kind of like a modern, nice-looking train, actually.
Yeah, it's really modern. I mean, all of these are modern. Like, high-speed 1 is... Let me see if I can show you this one. Wait a minute. Am I talking about high-speed 2? I think I might be. No. Yeah, it's the Class 395. I think this one's really cool. This is a British high-speed train. They're actually building a line all the way from London to Birmingham. I think it's complete at this point. So now the citizens of London will be able to experience all of the horrors of Birmingham that we face in America every single day. Courtesy to you. Beyond that, this one's actually pretty neat. And let's see. Oh yeah, here's an ICE. The Deutsche Bahn ICE. I think these are really cool. This is like an ICE.
I like that.
Yeah,
that's a nice one, man. The ice is like really it's cold.
Man, in ice in America and ice in Germany, two totally different things. Like but also there is the TGV, which is France's high-speed train, and I think it's a really neat one.
Oh, yeah. That's that one right there that got messed up by some saboteurs when the Olympics were happening. I remember covering that.
Yeah, the first ones were orange, and like they looked okay. I think the upgraded ones, which are over here, look far better than the original TGV.
Oh, yeah. Dang, man. The new ones look much, much better than that.
Yeah, and also the modern ones are duplexes, so they actually have bi-level the passenger cabs, which are really neat to me.
Yeah, I like those too.
Yeah, I think it's just I think this thing is cool. But beyond that, I also saw Walter E. Lakota bring up the Spanish high-speed trains. I don't like them. Let me go pull them up because now I have to show them. Maybe you'll see why I don't like them. Because I don't always base my like stuff on like performance. Sometimes it's just based on looks, and these things are god ugly. Look at that thing.
Oh, that's the duck train right there. The ducks are coming in.
Yeah, they use some ICE 4s, I believe, or ICE 3s, I think that is. Or it's like a DB 401 or something like that. I think it's its official designation. But their actual high-speed train, good God, it's just terrible.
Oh,
It
oh
looks
my goodness, man. The schnoz on that thing.
it looks like a Talgo that's used in the Cascades here in America by Amtrak. It's just like, it's terrible. Let me go see if I can show you all the Talgo. Oh, it's made by the same people. Hold up. Cascades Talgo cab. Ew. Dude, I gotta show this to y'all. Y'all are just gonna be horrified by this one. You're gonna be like, what the hell? Like, it's so bad. It's hilarious. That's the Talgo cab. Ugh. Dude, it looks like a mix in between like a semi-truck and Mitsubishi, like minibus kind of a thing.
Yeah, it looks like the front's made out of like plastic or something.
Ugh, it's terrible. I hate these things. And they use them on the Cascades trains. This is also in Portland, Matthew, which we dropped by. There wasn't a Cascades train that we got to see with the Talgo cab on it the whole time. And also, if they were, they would be zipping right past us where we really couldn't look at it. But, I just hate them. But the inside of the Talgos are not bad, actually.
Oh
They're-
wow, man, that's nice. Look at that. Oh, that's like a bar or something right there.
Yeah,
Look at
it's
the
a-
roof.
It's a bar and a little cafe where you can get some snacks. Dude, Amtrak actually does run some pretty neat services still to this day. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, dang, this one got messed up.
Dang, man, somebody had a little too much to drink at the bar.
Man, they said, man, I'm going to the bistro, and then beat the hell out of the side of the thing and knock the whole piece off. Man, I'm telling you. But still, Amtrak does run some pretty nice services. I'd say that the Cascades ones are probably some of the best, in my opinion. You're not going to run into this kind of stuff in the Northeast Corridor, man. That's bygone. Like, that will not happen. That may as well be, like, buses up there. But anyways, with that, also, by the way, this is where the Cascades run. They run all the way from Eugene, all the way up to Vancouver. They run that whole length. Eugene! So if you were up in that area, you can actually ride the Cascades from all the way from Vancouver down to Eugene in Oregon. And it is a pretty fast service. I believe it gets all the way up to 110 miles an hour on some parts. So it is a speedy service. I'll tell you, oh wait, the operating speed is only 79 miles per hour at the top. Man, I'll tell you what, man, the Amtrak that went through that area, you know, the Coast Starlight that we were on? Dude, that last strip from, I think it was like Kelso all the way up to like Olympia. Holy moly, I don't know what was going on with the rails through that area, but we were getting flung around like a rag doll, like, for that whole trip.
Well, yeah, it was like they had floored it too. It was like, dang, like they had been going somewhat like moderate speed the whole way there, but when they got near Portland, and after that, they started like flooring the train, like slinging it around like the tracks and corners and everything.
Dude, they were an hour late. I remember that. They were like, we were an hour late, and like Amtrak's always late, y'all, so like that's not even like a big deal. It's like, okay, well, they're usually like 16 hours late, so what's the rush? But this engineer, I think this engineer was trying to like make like that cross-country record that they do on the interstates. He was like, I'm going to be on time. That guy, I think he just absolutely gassed it because it looked and felt like we were going like 110 through that area, and we were like, the rail cars were like almost like flying off the rails. We were going that fast. Like we were in the dining car, and the servers were literally getting thrown pretty much onto people's tables. The cars were like shaking that violently. So
I remember, man, I was honestly like getting a little shook from it. I was like, dang, man, is this train gonna like jump off the tracks or something like that? It's like, it's literally like slinging people around like the tracks, like you're like on a racetrack or something. I'm like, this doesn't feel right.
Dude, I'm not gonna lie, that was actually kind of fun, you know, like bouncing around the hallways as we were trying to get to the diner and back. But that was still wild at the same time because the rails were so smooth until we got there, and then it was like the train has like this nice little kind of like ebb to it, like it kind of just rocks a little bit like a boat. But once it got through there, I mean, it was like violently bouncing around, and we were just going so fast you couldn't even see anything. Everything was a blur out the window. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that well. Pretty fun little rabbit hole, honestly. I liked that train trip. Like, I know that the train wasn't like, I'll say it, like, Amtrak isn't the most glamorous kind of a train experience you'll ever get, but looking back on it, it was pretty fun to see the entire West Coast out of a window of a train, not having to worry about where you're driving, where the hotel is, and what you're going to eat. All that was pretty much just taken care of, and you just got to look out the window. I liked it. It was pretty calm, and I enjoyed it. It's just that Amtrak could. Well, I mean, like, you know, we also got the bad experience. Man, I tell you, man, that guy in Los Angeles did us a solid, and then he also didn't do us a solid because he had us in the same car. But then at the same time, he put us in the Combine, which is where the employees stay, and they didn't refit that car. Every single train on the car had been refit with modern upholstery and was clean. Like, they had pretty much stripped the inside and remade it just 2 months before that. And then we got put in the car that the employees used that they didn't refit, and it had like 25-year-old upholstery and stuff in it, so it was, you know, pretty worn out when we were in there, and we're like, ugh, you know, but everything else was clean. That was really a shame, dude, that happened, because if y'all had been put in the cleaner modern upholstered car, things would have been a lot better.
Maybe so. That I just know the car we were in was nasty as hell. Like it did not feel clean.
I'm not gonna lie, dude. It wasn't the cleanest of cars at all. And I was like, dag nabbit, because we remember, man, we walked through the new ones and we got to see the new insides. Like, let me go pull it up. Amtrak Super Coach, Superliner, sorry, Superliner refurbishments. Let's see here. Let me show you this, because you'll see it, man. You'll be like, oh yeah, I remember that. So here was the new one. This is what the new ones looked like compared to ours.
Oh man, this brings back bad memories looking at this. I'm
Oh,
not gonna
come
lie.
on.
Seeing
It
this
was
room out right here, it brings back some horrible memories. I remember I was sitting in here, but an older one that didn't look nice like this. I was thinking, what I would do to get off this train right now. Does this window open?
this is what it
Can I
looked
tell?
like in ours.
Yeah, that's honestly, man, it's cleaner and nicer. And ours was not that big either. It was just like a normal one.
Yeah, it was a
But this
roomette.
looks way cleaner. This looks way cleaner than what we had.
Man, I'm not gonna lie, man. Like, you've been ruined on train trips forever. You're never gonna take one again. I know that. But at the same time, though, it would have been a lot better if we had been in one of the refurbished cars. Like, I actually do believe. And also, it would have been better if you hadn't gotten sick out of the blue and actually gotten a fever and stuff on the middle of being on the train, because I think you associate the sickness with the train. And you were sick afterwards, like into the next day and when we got home. So I think that you were just like sick with something. You came down with something while on the train.
Maybe so. I just don't know, man. Like train travel's not my thing. I'll do the airplane as long as it's not crashing. I'll do the car. I'll do pretty much anything, even the ship. But doing the train, I don't like the train.
I liked it, me personally. I just would have liked to have been in a refurbished car that would have been like new. But we didn't get that. We didn't get these. We got the old ones that look kind of like this. Like they had that upholstery on them. And ugh, man, they actually was kind of like a little worn out. But beyond that, I like Amtrak. I think it provides a great service. I think they should expand their service and also improve it a good bit. And that requires some funding. And also,
Butchie 777 said those carpets are minging. I like that, a minging. But yeah, seriously, they were minging. Like everything in that car that we were in was minging. Like it felt like they had like cleaned nothing. I'm like, now they're saying they're cleaning these cars. I'm not seeing it. Like maybe they went through like a little broom or something like that, but that was about it. They didn't like desanitize anything.
now I can show you actually. Well, you know what? I'm gonna go show you over in New York because I know where that yard is. I can actually show you where they do clean out the cars. It's in this yard right here. This is the combined Long Island Railroad and Amtrak yards. But they will take any units that are not in service, pull them into this yard, and servicing crews will come in and they'll clean them out. So like there is actual cleaning that goes on. They also have a place like this in LA, but this is a Sunnyside yard up in New York, and this is one of the biggest ones that Amtrak has. But they also have small ones in Seattle and LA and Chicago, and I think New Orleans. But you're never getting anything clean in New Orleans. Like I'm just gonna be honest, nothing will ever be clean in New Orleans. Bourbon Street, it will never be clean, much less the cars to come out of New Orleans. So, yeah, that kind of is what it is. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that well, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to none other than AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, who puts in a $15 donation. And thank you very much, AMX10, for that support once again and helping to keep the channel running. And it said, your long talking to stream about the Panama situation at some stage in the past week was world class. You do it in an interesting, detailed way while adding one or two simple parts.
And thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you for the support. I always try and explain things in ways that are simple, concise, and make sense. Some people find it offensive when you say that you say things in simple ways, but really, that's not offensive at all. I mean, who the hell has the time to be an expert in everything? And I certainly don't. So it's better to explain it in the much simpler and more direct terms and what's going on and what our actual purposes are, instead of trying to do all the stuff that people do these days to make themselves feel smart when they're talking about it, which is come up with all these abstract terms and say all these things that no one even understands. Like, I'm just not a buzzword person. I'm not one for making things sound complicated. And I thank you so much for enjoying the explanation that I gave, because I felt like it was a very straightforward one and really explained my argument, my side of the line on what we should be doing with Panama in a very good way that was very clear to understand. People agreed and disagreed with it, but I felt like it was a fairly good explanation. And of course I'm biased because I'm the one who gave it, but still, thank you for the kind words and the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Linda, who puts in a $14 donation. And thank you very much, Linda, as well, for supporting the channel and helping to keep the thing running. And Linda said, what type of satellites does NATO have for penetrating cloud cover in order to keep track of the nuclear-capable ground resources?
Unfortunately, I do not know the answer to that question.
That would be Space Delta 4.
Well, that's the unit, but I don't know what satellites. Like, they were asking, I think, the satellites.
The SIRS.
Can it look through cloud cover?
I believe it can. Pull it up, though. But verify that. Trust but verify.
Space-based infrared system. Ah, yes. I see you know your satellites well. Actually, this is in the documentary. Might be coming out tomorrow. But, oh man, look, they got the HEO, the GEO, the LEO, the relocatable terminals, and the DSP.
Yes, and do y'all know where this SBIRS system is operated from? You might guess it's operated from Greenland at the Patuxent Space Base, which will be in the documentary that's coming out either tomorrow or maybe the next day after that. But yes, it's operated from there, and it's the Space Force that operates it. It's a very complicated system. It's based on infrared, and it could detect ballistic missile launches and any type of launch around the world within literally seconds. It can literally notify them, and they can notify the rest of the U.S. military from Greenland.
And also, another thing, Matthew, is that most of that information is actually compiled in a special restricted facility near to Colorado Springs, which is called Schriever Space Force Base, right here.
Aha, I thought you were about to say Raven Rock or something.
No, this is actually the facility, and it's the largest restricted area in the entirety of the United States.
Really? Are you sure about that? Because I know some other ones that are pretty restricted.
Like this one requires like top secret clearance to get into the whole facility. Like there's no lower security clearances. It's all top level. Pretty much, like the only thing above top secret is top secret on a need to know basis. And this is literally just a second rung above that. This is the most restricted facility in the United States by size.
Interesting. And also, by the way, I see that Christian Cruz said, look at the Airbus SAR radar. That's another one.
And let's take a look at that. The Airbus SAR radar. And let's just type in Airbus SAR. Maybe they'll find it for us. Or is it these? Is it these?
Probably so. It's a radar constellation. It's like some stars or something.
What is the radar constellation? the German Terrasar X Tandem X satellite formation, and the Spanish PEZ, that's like PEZ, managed by Heidstat Servicios Estratégicos SA, are being operated in the same orbit tube and feature identical ground swaths and imaging modes, allowing Airbus and Hisdesat to establish a unique commercial radar constellation. The satellites carry a high-frequency X-band synthetic aperture radar sensor in order to acquire data sets ranging from very high-resolution imagery to wide area coverage. That's actually pretty neat. I did not know about that one. I don't really know a lot about satellite systems in space. I probably need to know a lot more about it because it's really important for intelligence gathering these days.
Well, you know, these right here, I believe you can purchase some of the imagery from these, I think. I'm not really sure, though, because I know Airbus does some commercial imagery along with Maxar. That's two different companies that do it. And also, I think Google has some of their own, or actually, I take that back. They might actually be buying their footage and stuff like that, also their imagery. But I know Airbus does some commercial stuff. So maybe this is the military side of things, but they also do the other.
Interesting. But I hope that does address that fairly well, at least the best we can. And with that, it is time for us to move on to the next one.
All right, so moving on to our next one here. This one goes to the Panama Canal, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Panama, for that support. And you were still taxing our ships, but they said, Slava Ukraine.
And Slava Ukraini, and thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. We would like to thank the Panama Canal Authority for helping Ukraine to keep fighting the war against Russia. And so with that, thank you once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one. What are people telling me in the live chat here? I'm seeing someone's telling me that there's another crash plane. I don't know if they're referring to the same one in Alaska that I was talking about earlier, but I'm only seeing that one so far that apparently got lost. Let's see here. Yeah, I'm only seeing so far the one that got lost. So you must be talking about that one because I'm not seeing a second plane crash. Now, if there was a second one, I would say that's very concerning. But it looks like maybe there's just one with 10 people on board. And it looks like it probably crashed somewhere right outside of Nome, Alaska. But that's just based on what we're seeing right here. By the way, it's a Cessna Grand Caravan EX that crashed out there. Or it went missing, but it basically crashed. But anyways, we are jumping into our next super chat here. And this one goes to Rose Silver, who puts in a 10 and does not leave a comment. But thank you very much, Rose Silver, for that support and helping to keep us running. And Enforcer, what to say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support, Rose Silver, and helping this channel to keep on running. It is folks like you who help to make this thing possible, help us to keep it running, and we thank you massively for that, and we thank you for the support as well. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Not For One, Yet For All, Ukraine, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much for that support. They said, shout out for my brother in the Coast Guard for over 20 years. And I just seen the MH-60T in the intro. Such an amazing bird. And pay attention to the person next to you and always help others and pay it forward.
And thank you so much for the support, and a big shout out to the Coast Guard, an amazing branch, an unsung branch of the U.S. Armed Forces that is incredibly important to this nation's security and also the well-being of sailors around America's coasts. A really amazing branch, and I gotta thank you so much once again for support and the kind words. And of course, we will try and pass it on forward, even if others do not. And you know what I mean by that, Matthew. But with that, we are on to the next one.
Oh, I get no respect around here. I get no respect.
Man,
but
I'm telling
anyway.
you.
Next one here goes to BSG75, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, BSG, for that support and helping to keep us running. BSG says, thank you for your work. Love you guys. And thank you for that. And love Ukraine.
And thank you so much for loving our work, and we love all of y'all in the Lee Spring Army. It's an amazing group of folks, an incredible thing, and I gotta thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it rolling. So a huge thanks to you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Colbs89, who puts in a 10 as well and says, thanks for all you do.
And thank you so much for enjoying all we do. We try our best. Even if we cannot have a bit of success, we try a good deal. And I got to thank you so much once again for the support and the kind words and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible. We wouldn't be able to keep it running. And, of course, we wouldn't be able to make sure that we can stand on our own two legs. Something that's very important nowadays. A little bit more important, more so now than ever. Because, you know, of things going on in the background. We'll just leave it at that. But with that, thank you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And what's the old saying? We'll accommodate the most ridiculous guest, even with the most reasonable request.
We shall not deny a guest even the most ridiculous
Oh
request.
yeah. I think I mixed that up really bad. But anyways, yeah, not the most ridiculous guest. It's the most reasonable guest, and the most. I don't know. But
Man, you're gonna
anyways,
sit there. We will not deny the most ridiculous guest, even the most reasonable request. It's like, well, obviously, you know, it's like,
I don't know what the hell, man. I was trying to go for that little line there, but anyways, that didn't work. But moving on here to our next one. This one is going to go to Chillin Kavilin, who puts in the 10. And thank you very much, Chillin Kavilin, for the support. They said, Enforcer Matt, can the Ukrainians use the fork drones with carrots on them to lure away the ammo donkeys? And inquiring minds want to know. Operation Donkey Distraction.
maybe. I mean, actually, that wouldn't be that bad of an idea. You know, just like hijack a donkey and, you know, pretty much lead it away with food. I mean, honestly, that could start causing a great deal of confusion. Really, I think that might be something worth looking into and trying, maybe investing in a little bit. But still, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, let's see here. Dustin Mayo told me in the live chat. I just looked on Flight Radar 24. It looks like the U.S. Air Force transport is headed toward Nome. And yeah, I saw that as well. It looked like they're sending some more support aircraft to the region. Looks like the Coast Guard's joined in, which is expected. And it looks like the whole operation is on. So hopefully they can find it. But, you know, that's some cold water up there around that part. I would not want to be in that water. But anyways, jumping into our next question here. This one goes to Westmoreland 1991, who puts in a 10. And thank you very much, Westmoreland, for that support. They said, what is y'all's opinion on the United States wanting access to Ukraine's rare earth metals, possibly in exchange for continued support? And this is not meant to be political.
I don't think it's really that bad of an idea. The United States gets access to rare earth metals that we really need for economic reasons and also production reasons, and Ukraine gets continued military support. It really doesn't cause any harm to anyone. It's really just, you know, beneficial as usual. So I'd actually say it's not that bad. You know, speaking about it in a non-political means on a strategic level, in with American interest and Western interest in mind, it's not that bad of a plan, and it's not that bad of an arrangement that's already been accepted from what we understand, and support to Ukraine is still going on. I have to say this though, it kind of didn't. I'll have to be honest here. The wordage is a very important thing, and I don't really think the United States was specifically being barred beforehand from accessing these rare metals. So making it sound like the United States is now getting access to them, I think that might be a little bit of miswordage, the best way to put it, because we probably already had access to all these rare metals. It's not like the Ukrainians were specifically barring them from export, from what I understand. But I could be wrong.
No, Ukraine was offering them the whole time. Or like, remember that was part of Zelensky's quote unquote peace plan to keep the West supplying Ukraine with weapons. He was proposing that for I think a month or two prior to actually this coming true. So it's not like a brand new like deal that someone carved out of stone or something. This has been around. They simply took advantage of it.
I think maybe what it is that's special is that America is prioritized for the rare metals purchases. So if an American purchase order comes in, even if it's a lower cost, they just throw every other purchase order aside and fulfill the American purchase orders. I think that may be what the arrangement is most likely looking like, but I will have to look into the details, which I don't think we've gotten yet from either side, either the Ukrainians or the U.S. government. And so with that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And thank you once again for support. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Ambi Pambi, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Ambi, for that support also. And they said Russia could make a deal with Mexico. Tijuana says they have thousands.
I don't know what that means. Bandy, do you know what that means?
Thousands of what, Ambi Pambi? Let's see. Russia could make a deal with Mexico. Let's see. Why would Russia want to make a deal with them? Tijuana says they have thousands. What was that in reference to, I wonder? What does Russia need a lot of?
Tis a mystery.
I don't really know. I'll be honest with you. Like avocados, maybe some minerals. They need some Panama Canal. They need some something. I'm not sure.
I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't really know. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. Oh yeah, Matthew. Remember when we went to Cozumel?
Oh yeah.
Oh man, jeez, man. Remember when we went down there on the oldest ship in the fleet? Oh man,
we went down there on the oldest ship in the fleet, and then we drove into cartel land.
Yeah, well, Oh boy, man, knowing how things are these days, if the cartel had popped out, they would have thrown us on the side of the street. But anyways, moving on from that.
Oh, wait a
Oh,
minute. Wait a minute. I get it now. I get it. I see the people in the live chat. They're catching on. They're catching on faster than
oh,
we
yeah, yeah,
are.
yeah.
Ambi Pambi meant to say, or they were actually specifying. I just don't think we caught the reference. Ambi said Russia could make a deal with Mexico, and Tijuana says they have thousands of them donkeys.
Now I understand. And maybe they could, but I think that Mexico likes their donkeys. They're cute. But beyond that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Barry Woodward. And thank you very much, Barry Woodward, for that $10 support and helping to keep us running as well. He said, this just in. Putin sees green everywhere. Prepare for correction. Z the sky.
And thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And hopefully they do see green everywhere. That would be great. But still, thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to not for one, yet for all, Ukraine, who puts in their second support of the night. And thank you very much for that $5 support. And he said, at this point, should we be scared of Russia's nukes when most of the major missiles fail? Poe?
I think that we should still be scared of it. One nuclear weapon is a very devastating thing as it is. I mean, if one nuclear weapon hits New York, about 1 million people are going to be dead. So I would say it's still a scary thing. We have to be seriously concerned about it. But at the same time, it's not as big a threat as destroying the entire country like it used to be, now that we're clearly seeing that a lot of them have high failure rates, with clear evidence at this point. It's not just speculation, it's clear, hardcore evidence. And so with that, I thank you once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Blind Ambition, who puts in a 5. Thank you very much, Blind Ambition, for that support. They said, have a beer on me, lads. And we actually don't drink, but I might have to have a beer after some recent things. But take a question from the live chat.
And I thank you so much for the support. I'd have to agree with Matthew. After recent things, we'd have to have a beer. If y'all knew, like, we're not going to get y'all into the details, but if y'all knew the stupid stuff we had to deal with in the background, y'all would most likely be absolutely shocked. Sometimes, well, all the time, honestly. Anyone that we've told about this so far, which is a limited number of people, has been completely blown away with what we're having to deal with in the background right now. We make sure not to bring that on air. Y'all are here for news, y'all are here for laughs, and we want to make sure to get y'all the news and the laughs and make sure that y'all have a great time here every night, so we don't bother y'all with that. But we'll probably need one here fairly soon. But still, thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And also, Matthew, did they want a live chat?
Oh, no, they did not want a live chat.
Oh, well, still, thank you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Butchie777, who puts in that $10 donation, and thank you very much, Butchie, for that support. And I do agree with you once again. I think them train carpets are minging. Man, these scallops are minging. I don't know if y'all seen that episode of Ramsey getting run out of a restaurant eating a minging scallop, but we ran outside and started up-checking. But it was quite interesting. But thank you very much, Butchie, for that support. And once again, thank you very much. And Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta thank you so much for the support, Butchie777. And I also like how that hippo just falls out of the chair and dies, like, instantly. It's, like, very sad. That's a YouTube super sticker. But still, thank you once again for helping this channel to keep on running and making this thing possible. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep this thing rolling. And of course, we're massively appreciative for all the guards and channel legends like you who have always enjoyed this channel and always helped to keep on running. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Richard Hawkins, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Richard Hawkins, for that support and support the channel bigly, and we appreciate that very much, of course. He said, what is going with Syria in regards to the portion controlled by Hezbollah?
And I gotta say, I have not heard of a part of Syria that's being controlled by Hezbollah at this point. Everything's under control of the Syrian interim government or the different factions that make up the interim government still at this point. I'll be honest with y'all, I haven't really heard of a lot of governmental growth happening in the interim government at this point. It seems to have largely gone moot, and I'm not getting a lot of information. But at the moment, I can say that I have not heard of the Houthis controlling any areas of Syrian interim government land anywhere, for that matter. So I would have to say that that would be my answer at the moment. I haven't heard of that, so I'd have to largely declare ignorance on that if that is happening. And so with that, thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And it would seem like if Hezbollah was still like hanging out in Syria, it seemed like the Israelis, with the really like bombing spree they went on, would have probably smashed their positions by now as well. So if they were in there, they probably got smoked out by the Israelis. But anyways, thank you very much, Richard, for the support once again. And moving on here to our next one. This one goes to Monsieur Gaston, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much, Monsieur, for that support. He said, if the marmot hasn't arrived today, may we see him. And if so, have a good night.
Oh, hello there.
Oh, hello there, Governor.
It's-
Hello there. It's been a whopping 24 hours, good sir, since I've been out here on the stage, sitting on rock. We have rock here, up in the front. You see, rock for sale. Here, have some. I'm holding it down, making sure it's safe. We have 3 grapes, or 3 plums, whatever they are, right over there, for sale. And then we have the fly. He's always trying to go in for a chomp, free of charge. That's called theft. But anyways, don't do that.
Aw, man. Aw, man, life couldn't get worse for me. Aw, man. Aw, man. A desk and a chair and a trip for DC. Aw, man.
Aw, man, you'll do what you're told. Aw, man. Aw.
Man, I'm telling you what. Oh man, if only the hot dog man got the level of disrespect we get sometimes. Oh man, I'm telling you. But nevertheless, I thank you so much for the support, Monster Gaston, and helping this channel to keep on running and helping this thing to keep on rolling. Because you're ensuring that we can make sure to keep this thing on air and keep this thing enforcer-like, you know, because it's a great thing, you know, when you really think about it. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And whoa, we've got a plot twist yet again. Let's see here. Oh my goodness. It's hard to keep track of what the United States is doing these days. So the United States told us just a short while ago that the peace talks are going great. The peace talks are great. But now we've just gotten word from the envoy to Ukraine for the United States that the United States is ready and willing and able and anxious to double sanctions against Russia to end the war. That doesn't sound like peace talks are going too good, so I wonder what the hell that's all about. But that's fighting words to Russia, once again. That's not peacemaking words, that's fighting words. And that basically means that Russia is acting up, they're not agreeing to anything the United States is proposing, and they're not negotiating fairly, and now the United States is about to slap them good with more sanctions, which could mean the death of the Russian economy. So that's very interesting. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that's very interesting here, and it sounds like the United States is doubling down. Much to the Russians' dismay, and much to the dismay of many in the public. So we will be seeing what is going on with that here in the future. And so with that, thank you, Matthew, for sharing that breaking news. That's surely a development for the books. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, that little piece of information right there came out of the first meeting here with Ukraine's ambassador to the U.S. And the meeting with the Ukrainian envoy, Keith Kellogg. So that was the first conversation. They said it's very substantive. And out of that conversation came a massive threat toward Russia. So, oh, goodness. So that tells you a little bit right there. But anyways, moving on to our next one. This one goes to Trigger, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, good sir, for that support. And he said that thank you for all the great work you both do in getting the news all to us and LSA.
And thank you so much for the support, and thank you for being around for an incredibly long time, and thank you for having some kind words to throw in. It means a great deal to us, and I cannot say it enough. Folks like you mean a lot. Kind words mean a lot to us. We don't really get a lot of them behind the scenes. Matter of fact, we get dogged on a lot behind the scenes by certain folks. But it's always great to know that the people who watch this stream and get the news from this channel really enjoy it a great deal, because it gives us a purpose to running this thing. I would probably be blown away to actually hear that someone tried to call me a bum and a loser for doing this years ago. Someone that you would actually think would not ever say something like that, and they made it very clear that they thought nothing of what I was doing at that point, and really tried to tear the whole thing down. You never really sit there and you think about that kind of stuff until you sit in retrospect, and times like these were sitting in the background, and you think about how shitty that is coming from that specific person to sit there and their son is doing something that they did not do when they were that age, and then sit there and try and say something like that about them while they're going out of their way to do something that seems to be a general service to the nation and to the greater Western world at large. But I suppose that is what it is. That's really one of the reasons why, just to kind of give you all a little bit of tidbit more so of what's going on in the background. Why we are always appreciative of folks' words. It always comes out kind of a corporate thing when we say that, but it really does mean a lot because y'all are some of the only folks that we ever actually hear kind words from anywhere in the world for running the show. But I still thank you so much once again for supporting this channel and helping it to keep on running. Folks like you have been around forever and supporting this channel and making sure that we can keep this thing rolling well on into the future. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again for helping this thing to keep on rolling. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, speaking of the sanctions threat here coming out of the United States, Rob McGuffin said, Matt, what are they not sanctioning from Russia? Mainly, honestly, there are still some things to sanction, but the big one, the one that I believe the envoy is talking about, is chopping off completely all the oil and energy exports to Europe, which would arguably probably pretty much sink the Russian economy within like a short amount of time if that were to happen completely. So that is what the main thing is they're talking about, and that's the one thing we have not fully sanctioned completely. It's been sanctioned somewhat, but not all the way 100%. So that could be coming up based on that statement. But jumping into our next super chat here, this one goes to Dorian Odell, who puts in the 5. And thank you very much, Dorian Odell, for that support. And it said, this is the best newscast that I've been following for a while. And I thought I'd give my support and LSA.
And thank you so much for the kind words and thank you for the support. Thank you for saying that it's a great show. We try our best to make sure that this show is the best we can make it on air. And I hope that we were once again able to meet that mark tonight. 70,000 people have watched so far, and we had a peak viewership of about 11.1 thousand. So I got to thank all of you so much once again for always being here, always enjoying the channel, and always having kind words that encourage us to keep this thing running and also supporting it so that way we can make sure that we can keep this thing running as well. It is an absolutely incredible thing, and I got to thank you once again heavily for that. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to, let's see here, it goes to David Kendall, who puts in a 5. And thank you, David, as well. And they said, should Ukrainian soldiers be weary if they hear hee-haw?
I think they should. Like, hee-haw is a pretty rough show. Like, I never really liked it. I thought it was trash, to be entirely honest. But still, thank you once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. Excuse me, goodness. And our next one here goes to Wyatt Logan, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Wyatt, as well, for the support. He said, Enforcers kicks the mainstream media's ass because of no politics in reporting and refuse outside influence. And I'm happy to be an LSA member. And thank you, Enforcers. And thank you, Wyatt, for the kind words as well. That's very kind of you.
And thank you so much for the kind words. And thank you for enjoying our non-political stance. It is a amazing thing. It's a wonderful thing. For so many people to enjoy that. We always have people coming in trying to make it sound like we have to make a stand, and I don't think that's ever the case. This is like, well, you know, hell, you've already made your stand. Whoever this viewer is saying that, it's like, what's the point of me mirroring or disagreeing with your stance? It's like, it doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. And I'm glad to know that folks like you, Wyatt, really do enjoy this channel and the kind of reporting that we do, the kind of positions we take, and how we report news in general, because it means a lot to me that we're able to be a very special kind of a voice, really defining the space on YouTube, at least in our own small way. And I got to thank you so much once again for helping this thing to keep on running, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to be the unique YouTube channel that we are here on air every single day. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right. And also, by the way, I saw the next wave said, I just joined Patreon. I saw you join Patreon,
Hey,
actually.
welcome.
Thank you very much for joining that, by the way. Huge shout out to all of our Patreon supporters. We don't say this enough. And honestly, I've made a concerted effort to start posting on Patreon like a lot. Y'all might notice if you're subscribed over there, I've been posting like a fiend in January. That's like my New Year's thing, is to start posting monthly, pretty much every week on Patreon, as a big thank you to all of our Patreon supporters, because I feel like we've neglected it somewhat over the last year because we've just been bogged down with so much different stuff. So we are going to start posting like fiends. So thank you, Next Wave, for joining the Patreon. And thank you to everybody that's already subscribed as well. But moving on to our next one. This one goes to Dustin Mayo yet again, who puts in a 5 and says, take a question from the chat, and here's 5 for coffee for you both. And from this Alaskan LSA member.
I gotta thank you so much for the support, and thank you for being a member of the LSA all the way from Alaska, the far final frontier of the United States of America. And I gotta thank you for supporting the coffee fund, because we'll need a great deal of coffee to keep things running here over the next few weeks, and hopefully we'll be able to make sure that the news coverage is as good as it was tonight and every other night well on into the future. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Kachulin343, who puts in the 5. And thank you, Kachulin, as well for that support. And it said, check out Percy Hobart if you like UK tanks. And also looked into the Gaza idea more. And I'm less hot on it, and I don't see a good way to do this, honestly, at all.
Thank you so much for the support. And Percy Hobart's the guy who made the flail, wasn't he? Like, I think he is. Or he was the one who made the funnies, I believe. Let me check that. Okay, so here we go. We got him. Oh, yeah. He was the guy who made the funnies. So he was the one who made all of the interesting little vehicles that would roll up onto the beaches, on D-Day. And that's actually pretty cool. And I got to thank you so much once again for sharing that. I actually have looked into this guy before. Just forgot about him a little bit. But I thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I hope I addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Clayton Welke, who puts in a 5. And thank you, Clayton, as well for the support. He said, good day, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt. And how long would a nuclear weapons from England...
Oh, bless you.
Let me restart that. They said, good day, Enforcer and Enforcer Matt. And how long would a nuclear weapons from England, France, or America take to get to Russia when fired a pound?
Well, in general, an intercontinental ballistic missile will take about 15 minutes to travel from the United States. Well, actually, I think it's a little bit longer than that, because Matthew was telling me that we had 30 minutes of response time when the Russian nuke is fired. But I believe, let's see, how long...
I think it's 25 to 30 minutes, by the way, early warning when they fired them over the Arctic and toward the United States.
So let's see here. What is the answer? An ICBM can reach its target in about 30 minutes or less. So it is about 30 minutes. So from the point of firing to the point of impact, it's about 30 minutes. So with that in mind...
And also, we only have that 25 to 30-minute warning time. We literally get that within seconds, by the way, because of the satellites and also the radars we have in Greenland. That's the reason why we're able to get such an early warning, is only because of our bases at Greenland, by the way.
It's a fairly interesting thing with that, and that's why the documentary should be coming out tomorrow or the next day, depending on if there's a midday video to be made tomorrow or not. But nevertheless, I do have to say that, yes, it takes about 30 minutes for an ICBM to reach from Russia to America, from America to Russia, and probably a lot less for the UK, probably about 15 minutes or 10 or a little bit less than that, I would assume, depending on the target. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
I can't wait to get that Greenland video out. Like, I think y'all are gonna like that one a lot. I hope. I'll be honest with y'all. One thing I will preface it with this, so that way nobody's like disappointed with us. The video ended up a little bit shorter than I thought. Like, I was shooting for 10 minutes. It ended up like being 8 minutes long. So it's not as long as I thought. To be perfectly honest, I had to take some footage out because we didn't want to get a copyright issue with it. So I had to take a little bit of footage out, which was actually a speech of a Danish politician speaking about Greenland. So I had to get that out of there. So, sadly, the video's not that long. Although 8 minutes, honestly, it might seem long to some people. Like, honestly, if you're listening and it seems long, let me know, because it could be a bad thing. But anyways, jumping into our next one, this one goes to Kyle Padell, who puts in a 5. And thank you very much, Kyle, for the support. And he said, Pitcher, Oklahoma is another abandoned town, which was a big lead and zinc mining town, and that got in the water source.
And let's see, did they give the name? Because I remember the name, but I don't remember where it is.
It was Pitcher, Oklahoma.
Pitcher. I think this is the one. Yeah, this is the one that did all of like the toxic mining. Yeah. You can actually see the giant mounds around it from all of the mining operations, and it's extremely toxic out here in Pitcher. Practically no one lives here anymore. There's a small little community that does, but y'all can see that most of the town has been abandoned, and a lot of the buildings have either been demolished or just collapsed over time. But it was a wild thing. A lot of the lead that actually was produced in World War II was produced around this area near Pitcher, which is pretty crazy when you think about it, because it's just kind of like a giant pit. But beyond that, this is a very similar town, kind of in a way to how ecological disasters affected the town of Centralia in Pennsylvania. Pretty much the same thing happened down here in Pitcher in Oklahoma. And that is actually a fairly interesting story that unfortunately I think will have to be for another time. But still, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And oh no, our first time super chatter, Serenity Palette, they retracted their message.
Oh.
Dang it, I didn't even get to see it. But they put in a $10 donation the first time ever. And thank you very much, Serenity Palette, for that support. And I assume you had a typo in there. But sadly, YouTube won't let you put the message back in. So if you can tag me in the live chat with what you had in there, and I can actually return to it and ask that, by the way. But by the way, huge thanks for the first ever support on the stream. We appreciate that very much. And we want to address your question. Like, I saw it there. I want to address it. So feel free to tag at Enforcer Matt in the live chat, and we'll return to that here in just a second. But Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support, Serenity Palette. I thank you for your first super chat ever. I hate to see that you retracted your message. We would have read it and we would have addressed it. But I do thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you help to make this thing possible, and we're massively appreciative of folks like you supporting us and helping us to keep this thing running, because if it wasn't for y'all, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible day in and day out. And so with that, thank you once again. And we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Ryan H., who puts in a 5. And thank you, Ryan, as well, for the support. He said, "Good evening, Enforcers, and what are your thoughts on the Boom Overture, the supersonic aircraft being developed by Boom Technology?" I actually saw that, Ryan. That's pretty cool, actually. I don't think it's a Concorde-like aircraft. I don't know if that's the actual objective behind it or not, but the Enforcer saw it the other day, and I showed it to him. He's like, it's kind of cool, but it's not really like the Concorde-like level of cool. So, Enforcer, what do you think?
I mean, it's all right. I don't really think this thing will turn into much, because really the issue is, unless this thing is fuel efficient, is that the Concorde was fuel hungry and consumed a lot of fuel for the amount of passengers it could carry. So even with it being all first class, it just wasn't economical, and that's why they really wanted to get rid of them. So if this thing runs into the same problems, there's going to be no commercial buyers of this thing out there. And also, let's see, it has a range of 4,250 nautical miles, which is decent. And let's see, but the problem is, I was explaining to Matthew here about the speed of the thing. You can't even really use most of that speed, say the Mach 1.7 top speed. You can't even really use that, especially on transatlantic flights, because most transatlantic flights fly over the East Coast and then up over this area. Of course, we're looking at a flat map here on a globe. This actually would be a straight line. Up over the Atlantic and then down over Ireland and into the UK and then on into Europe. And this means that for most of your flight, you're over land. And every single country in the world has laws that regulate that you can't just fly a plane supersonic over a country or habitated land. So for that reason, you can only use the supersonic ability once you pass Newfoundland and before you reach Ireland. And this means that you really don't get a lot of usage out of that supersonic capability, and the plane is flying at its most inefficient at that point, which is subsonic, over the entirety of the US East Coast and Canada, and then on over into Europe. The only place that I could see this thing being economically viable would be over the Pacific, where there are vast swaths of nothingness, where you could fly straight from, say, California over to Japan or South Korea or somewhere else, because there isn't a large amount of landmass there that would be stopping you. It's practically open ocean. There wouldn't be a lot of people to bother. So I could only see this thing being competitive or viable in the trans-Pacific flight department, and really not in any other, because there just really is no way to do supersonic flights over occupied land without having massive legal issues to overcome, which would be impossible to overcome. And so with that, I hope that does address that fairly well, at least in my opinion. Neat aircraft, but generally supersonic aircraft just don't really work in practice because of the amount of noise they create when flying over habitated areas, and also the inefficiency produced from that limitation. But with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Oscar Nielsen, who puts in at 5. And thank you, Oscar, as well, for that $5 support. He said, "What is your opinion about NATO making a statement about actually considering sending troops into Ukraine if Belarus decides to join the war, an LSA?"
And can you reread that one again?
They said, "What is your opinion about NATO making a statement about actually considering sending troops into Ukraine if Belarus decides to join the war?"
I believe the French actually made that to be an outline where if any other additional country like Belarus joined the war, they would enter the conflict. And I believe that would be a pretty good thing for NATO to do, to pretty much cut them off at the pass before Belarus gets involved, and to say if they get involved, we might as well just start moving this on into a major conflict and move Western forces into Ukraine. I think that would be a fairly decent move to start escalating it a little bit further to get it possibly to a negotiating table. But honestly, it doesn't even look like the Russians want to negotiate at all, so that might just kick off World War III and then move us on into a nuclear conflict at this point. But who knows? I still think that that's not a bad idea, though. But with that, thank you once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, real quick, I saw Craig Savarese say in the live chat, he said, "Has there been any word on what warhead was on the failed IRBM? Was it inert or conventional?" Honestly, we have no idea. Like the details about the malfunction and the explosion on Russian territory is very slim info to come by. The Russians have not released any information about it because they want to try to cover that up. And the U.S. sources that actually provided the information, they're not really saying much either. That's probably on purpose, to be honest. They're probably trying to not blow this situation up and make a lot of people know about it, so that way Russia doesn't feel like they have to save face. So we just simply don't know. But Enforcer, have you heard anything?
I haven't really heard anything right now about the warhead or anything because, once again, the Russians had this happen during their control over the entirety of their territory, so they're not really going to publish a lot of info about the failure. So for that reason, I would say also, if y'all heard my voice waver, I was actually trying to hold back some indigestion right there. Sorry about that. But beyond that, I don't think we're going to be getting a lot of information about what kind of warhead was on board, whether it was inert or kinetic or something along those lines. We probably will not know. So with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you once again for support and helping this channel keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Marc-Andre Brunette, who puts in a 3. And thank you very much, Marc-Andre Brunette, for always throwing in that $3 support. And we sincerely do appreciate that very consistent support as well. And Enforcer, what say you?
I got to thank you so much for the consistent support as well and helping this channel to keep on running. Folks like you have always made this channel possible and help us to keep it running well on into the future. And we are massively appreciative of that and really do thank you so much for enjoying this channel greatly and supporting it and helping it to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have another super chat, this time from Margaret Hemsley, who puts in a 3 and says, did Russian people leave when the USA bought Alaska?
I believe they did or didn't. I don't really think there were any Russians really in Alaska. Let's find out. Did Russians leave Alaska? When did Russians leave Alaska? Let's see. Let's see here. Can we get anything about it? Beginning in 1725. Russia offered to sell Alaska to the United States in 1859, believing the United States would offset the designs of Russia's greatest rival in the Pacific, Great Britain. The looming U.S. Civil War delayed the sale, but after the war, the Secretary of State, William Seward, quickly took up a renewed Russian offer and on March 30th, 1867, agreed to the proposal from a Russian minister in Washington, Edward de Stockel, to purchase Alaska for $17.2 million. Wow, if only the prices were that cheap these days. The Senate approved the treaty purchase on April 9th. President Andrew Johnson signed the treaty on May 28th, and Alaska was formally transferred to the United States on October 18th of 1867. This purchase ended Russia's presence in North America and ensured U.S. access to the Pacific Northern Rim. Let's see here. So it appears that Alaska was a wild wasteland, according to what the Office of the Historian is saying about Alaska up until about the 1880s and 90s. There was pretty much no U.S. presence in Alaska at all. So I would assume that there probably was some Russian trappers or traders that were traveling around the area, but probably not many settlements because the Russians considered it to be a barren wasteland of nothingness. And then we found gold and everything else on it. And then the Russians went, it's ours, and then started crying about it for the rest of history. So anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one here goes to Plazath, who puts in a $3 donation and says Coffee Fund. And thank you very much, Plazath, for donating to the Coffee Fund and helping to keep that running as well, because, of course, we must stay caffeinated in order to stay up until 12:30 at night. So thank you very much, Plazath, for that. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, and thank you for the Coffee Fund. It means a lot and helps us to keep caffeinated, like Matthew was saying, and be absolutely zooted for the show. And so a huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our last super chat here of the night. This one is going to go to Paul Anderson, who puts in a $2 donation. And thank you very much, Paul, for that support. I do not see a comment attached, but thank you nonetheless for helping to keep the channel running and the coffee flowing. And with that, guess what, folks? That is our last super chat of the segment. Sadly, I never saw the question come in from Serenity Palette, who put in that $10 donation. So if you ever want to cash that in, let us know. But anyways, we are now jumping into our live chat questions here, and our first one is going to go to the Morse code decoders of the stream. Tonight, we had Cliff Simonson, Mark Hodges, Earl Bernew, Kevin J, Paul Schultz, Dave Millsaps, Royal Fluffiness, Arabelle Garbo, Joni Dog, and also Norm Pritchett. They said that this evening's Morse code message is as follows. The Oreshnik failing was a little bit of a letdown, but you got to give it to them. They tried. And LLT, LSA.
And ding, 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 shh. And that's the sound of money. You hit the dead on the nail. And like the Morse code message says, I guess it's the thought that counts. I mean, they tried. You can't really diss on the Russians for being poor and losers nationally. You can't do that. I mean, who could ever have the gall to do that? I could, but beyond that, y'all did get that correct, and that is absolutely incredible. A huge congratulations for y'all getting that correct on the 1079th day of the war. You'll continue to get that correct time and time again, and we're really impressed with that. And so with that, we are now on into the live chat questions. Sadly, due to time constraints, I actually was wanting to make sure that we could get to a lot of live chats, but we are now going over time as of right now. We are going to be addressing 3 live chat questions and then rounding out tonight's stream. And so with that, we are on to the third to last question of the night.
All right, so this one is going to go to Drew D, who says, do you think that Russia using IRBMs means they are short on their other missiles?
Yeah, no. I would say they're most likely trying to use the missile best suited for the task. And also try and not only, save money by doing it, but also give a show of force, I suppose. So I believe that's why they're probably using IRBMs instead of any kind of an ICBM on Ukraine. And also to completely remove the fear in the U.S. or any other country's eyes that ICBM is not being launched at Ukraine, it's being launched at them, which is highly likely. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. Very good question. And with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
All right, and this one is going to go to, and I'm looking through here to make sure I'm getting one that we have not answered already. Because I'm seeing a lot of good ones. It's hard to pick, though, because there's like a lot of good questions in here. Let's see. This one is going to go to Adam McLean. He said, are these the kind of ships that Iran uses to test their new rocket delivery systems out in the ocean?
I would say no, because the Iranian drone ship is brand new, so they were probably using other vessels to test out their drones in the past, because this one is brand new, spanking new, and it just came out today. I was wanting to see, wait a minute, this kind of looks like it. I actually may be one of them, because it has some sort of a landing pad on the front of it, so it's possible that could be one of the vessels used to test out the drones in the past. I actually do not know where the drone carrier is relative to this satellite picture, unfortunately, so I would unfortunately have to keep y'all guessing on that one. But still, I hope that... Also, look, there's a mothership right there with 2 patrol boats attached to the upper deck, so these might be the ones that were used to test drones in the past. I'm not specifically sure, because Iran is in a 9th-rate navy, and so I just don't really pay attention much to what they do, or any of their technology for that matter. And also, they have this Doljadan right over here, near to the steel plant, so, it's kind of a joke of a country, really. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And that viewer is going to be Avari Mendebratis, who says, I think Western jets will be effective only when there are enough of them in Ukraine's Air Force for continuous operations, so hundreds of them, and maybe a few jets here and there. What are your thoughts?
I would largely say that that's probably correct. Superior air power is really just a way to make sure that it sticks the best. You throw enough at a wall and it will stick, and that's largely how air forces and really militaries in general work, but you also want to make sure that whatever you're throwing has some quality and some stickiness to it so that way it'll stick. And I think that is the case with Western aircraft. It'll take a very large number of them to actually make a significant difference, and not only that, it will also take a great fleshing out of their weapons loadouts and abilities to really make sure that they make the best impact. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we have reached the end of tonight's stream, folks. 3 hours and 32 minutes in, exactly as I'm saying this right now. I got to thank all of you so much once again for watching this stream and enjoying it tonight. There were 11.1 thousand people here at the peak, and 73,000 people have watched the stream so far. If you did enjoy, please make sure to hit the like button. Please make sure to subscribe, because if it wasn't for folks like y'all, we wouldn't have a show to run, and we always love to know that y'all enjoy this channel greatly and want to see it to keep on running. Kind words mean a lot. Support is, of course, a great help, and we are, of course, entirely indebted and honored to be able to cover the news to each and every one of y'all every single night. And so with that, we will be seeing y'all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And also, if there is no big war news coming out for us to make a short war summary, Matthew's Greenland documentary will finally be coming out for all of y'all to see. The highest production and most well-produced documentary ever put out in channel history yet. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Least Spring Army. The Least Spring Army will never die.
And also, the mic didn't even pick me up. I was actually going, hey, but anyways, it didn't even pick me up. But anyways, thank you all for another great stream once again tonight. And we will see you all tomorrow night, which is going to be Friday night, I believe it is. And like the Enforcer said, if we do not have enough news for a short war video tomorrow, you will be seeing the Greenland video premiering tomorrow around our normal short war video time instead. And that should be a very interesting one to see that coming out and see the reception of it. Hopefully you'll like it. But anyways, with that, folks, of course, Slav Ukraine, Herom Slava. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to join us again tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern. And with that, good night.